me. My name is Doobyis. This is Fly in Formation. It's a spin-off to my weekly mix show. The mix show is called After the Smoke is Clear, or At Sick Radio, where I take an hour worth of new independent hip-hop from across the country every week, put it into one place, and just try to get as many new ears on as much new music as I possibly can. So throughout the 5 or I guess 6 years now that I've been doing that show, I've found so many new artists and kind of just started digging into, the wealth of talent that there really is across this country, that I think gets slept on to too large of a degree. So I decided to start doing this Fly in Formation series and actually talking to artists, um, to learn more about them as well as kind of the local scenes that they've built and represent, right? So today, I've got a legend with me, West Coast legend. He was described that way to me by at least two other artists, so I think it's certified at this point. Um, Def3, welcome aboard, man. I'm really glad to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's an
Yeah,
honor.
dude. Hey, so man, like I said, I like to just kind of ask artists about the art that they make. So a good way to kind of start these off, I've learned, is to just ask, could you describe your sound so that people who might not have ever heard your music could kind of get an idea of what you do?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, I'm an MC that kind of came up in the underground rap scene. Um, as far as subject, most of my stuff is just like whether it's just like life, love, death, things that I go through, kind of personal journal type stuff. Um, and then, or party stuff. But then I was in hip hop for just strictly hip hop for probably as far as a career, maybe 13 years, but for probably more than that. So I started rapping in the 90s. But in 2015, I started kind of more working into a fusion of electronic music. Starting very minimal at first with more of a hybrid now to kind of like fully on the other side, which is
Okay.
basically, I guess if I were to define a genre, of what I would call and now push for, although I do a lot of different styles of electronic music. Um, what I'm becoming more known for is a genre that I guess sort of helping pioneer called bass hop, which is kind of an extension of glitch hop or trip hop, just like the newer version of that. But yeah, I think now I would describe it as like, I always say it's the everything I love about hip hop and everything I love about bass music in one.
Nice, man. So I noticed you mentioned there that like you've been rapping since the 90s, but that the career started whatever 13, 12 years ago. I forget exactly what you said there, but
Yeah.
more recently, and that was about the same time that you kind of made the switch over to this more EDM flavored sound, right?
Yeah.
Was it just more of a
Um,
hobby before then, or why did the
well, to be
career
honest,
part start then?
I call it the plunge. I took the plunge in 2003. So that was when I went to just become a full-time artist, and that's all I've ever done since. So when I was doing underground hip hop, at first it kind of started as like obviously like the way that we all kind of start, you have like rap crews and it's like battles and all this stuff. And then um I linked up with the just I used to live in Saskatchewan with the crew, Side Road Records and Factor became one of my best friends, and we really like that whole crew really helped. I guess before that there was another crew called Freak Show from Winnipeg that kind of put me on a bit and helped me release my first project. But um, with Factor, we both had two different worlds. I was Regina, he was Saskatoon, and we just became like instant best homies, and we toured the world together. Really started touring pretty soon. I almost think before that, like maybe in the early 2000s of like coming out west and guys like Emotions bringing us and doing Monday Night Live. And this is like 2001. But like my first real rap show was, I think it was opening for Swollen Members in like 1999 or something like that, like way
Nice, man.
back. And, over the years, the scene has changed so much. And so I probably did, when I say full time, it was a full time thing, but I was juggling a few other things. Like I do visual art, as well as I started off by doing a lot of like youth workshop programs, which was
Okay.
kind of helping pay the bills, as well as I was also a DJ in nightclubs and kind of just, but it was all the arts. And it wasn't until Um, so I did that from 2003 full time all the way up in, well, till now. But in 2010, I moved to Vancouver, uh, and and I pretty much immediately started rolling with the rap crew out from out here called Sweatshop Union, who
Yeah.
was kind of one of my oldest friends. Through
Absolute legends, those guys, man. I've got
Yeah,
several of their albums and boxes, back on the shelf right now, for sure. Yeah.
yeah, man, and they actually it's really funny how like weirdly connected it was. Like it wasn't even really through it wasn't even, I don't even think we were fans of each other's stuff. There was mutual respect there. But the very first guy that I ever made a song with was this dude. He was a DJ named DJ Sets. His real name is Mark Keston. And he was actually their manager. And so
Okay.
I think it was like, I was living in Calgary at the time, just for a brief years going to college. And he messaged me and was like, hey, like I got these guys, they're on tour called Sweatshop. And is it cool if a couple of them crash at your house? And so that was Kiprios and Ichi Ron, who also really good homies now. So they came to crash at my house, and I went to the show. They were like opening for Swollen Members at like a New Year's Eve show. And then the funny thing about it, we never really connected again until 10 years later. Uh, and so yeah, it was a weird, but so I did that and I was pretty much pushing that sound all the way up until about 2015. But there was like a bit of a I guess a gateway for electronic music through an old hip hop promoter that started working for Shambhala. So in 2010, she invited me to come do like a freestyle or something for a ticket. And then it slowly just started progressing from there. But I kind of like and weirdly, this is a whole other discussion, which I'm sure we'll get into, but
Yeah,
I had a fear of doing electronic music at first, just due to like the purist hip hop mentality that I have, or that, that really a lot of hip hop
for
embodies.
sure, man. Yeah, a lot of people want to stay in their very specific lane and kind of like stick to the like purest roots or whatever, dude. I did want to ask about that. And um
Yeah,
yeah, if you had to like consciously make a mental adjustment to
I
uh
did.
accept the new transition kind of.
Well, it was so much to the point where people would ask me because I was still playing like hip hop showcases at raves and stuff. But I would just say no. I was like, it's not really like what I do. And like, and in the back of my head, it was kind of funny because I was worried about like OG peers, like, oh, what will they think? Like it's not really what my sound is. And so, yeah. And then in 2015, I mean, I don't know if we want to get into that yet, but do you want me to just keep going on that?
Sure, man. Well, I did want to ask about like,
Yeah.
because so far you've mentioned Regina, Winnipeg. I think your bio talks about like being from
Toronto.
Toronto at some point. It also
Yeah.
said something about like growing up around Africa with parents who traveled a lot. I thought so like
hmm
where did you get into like first making hip hop? Like where did you kind of pick up? Where are your roots actually at? It sounds like you got a bit of it all over the place, right?
Yeah. So like, I guess I'll try to say long story short, but that never ended up being the case.
Hey, fair enough,
Um,
man.
so I was born in Toronto and I lived there until I was 4. And then my parents were actually missionaries when I was a kid. So like we moved on to this ship that was basically like a hospital ship, and they would travel to third world countries. I lived there for 7 years until I was 11. And then which was an interesting way to live. It was like a pretty big ship. It's called the Anastasis, and there's actually I remember seeing there's like a TV show on Discovery Channel about it, and but that's a whole different story, I guess. But from there, I moved to Texas. So this was like 1991 or 1992. And at the time, I was so, you live on a ship in the middle of these places. I was so sheltered and so like I didn't know what was going on in the world outside of like what really drastically made it through like Saturday morning cartoons or whatever I could get with the antenna. And as
That's
soon as I
that's
got
that's a weird contrast. Sorry, dude, but that's a weird contrast to say you were sheltered while you're on a ship, like, seeing the coast of
yeah,
Africa at the very least or whatever, right? Like I'm sure you got to see a lot of stuff that a lot of people who would describe their upbringing as like sheltered, didn't
mhm.
get to see or whatever. But yeah,
I
man,
guess
at the same time it would be isolated too on a ship like that. So yeah, I can
yeah,
I
like
can
we would
understand.
we were like, my dad is from Chile and my mom is Canadian. And so, we were doing kind of the back and forth thing but the ship when we went on it, it started off in like Latin America, which was at the time I didn't really know what was going on. Like I'm not even religious myself, but um we started in like Guatemala, went through Latin America, then we went to Europe, Eastern, like, and then we spent 3 years in Africa and kind of went back and forth over the time. But really, what they were doing, like, is also another bigger story. It's like classic missionary stuff, but there was good being done. Like, so the ship was a hospital, and they would go to these places and they would offer free healthcare. So you would essentially like now when I look at it, it's kind of weird in a sense of like it felt like doing damage control after like these US people were basically ruining
Sure.
all these places and then trying to send them in and be like, "Oh, we got you." Like, but so going from that in a sense of I was very it gave me a really big look on the world as far as what was actually happening in the world, but I didn't really understand it at the time. And so, but what I was sheltered from was basically just like, I guess the evils of the world. And
Right.
like, I didn't even really see someone smoke a cigarette until like I was like 11 or wherever. And I remember being like, whoa, what is this? Like a kid smoking? Like that's crazy. And then, so I went from that to Texas, to small town Texas. And there I was just like, whoa, this is insane. And just kind of like, but right away, hip hop was starting there. Like hip hop was really going. And it was at the time, the first things that I was listening to was like, Rex in Effect, Rump Shaker, and like Sir Mix-a-Lot and stuff that was like very mainstream, but it didn't take long for me to like kind of fall across things. And so we only lived there for about a year and a half, but I got this taste of hip hop where I was like, whoa, I love rap. It's so cool. And like hiding my tapes from my mom kind of thing because it had swears on it.
Was it that
And
regional like Texas stuff, like early Ghetto Boys and Scarface, and like, or was it kind of
it
more wide than that?
it wasn't real like the only things that I remember really discovering was like old like I don't know, I think it was like see like no limit kind of stuff
Okay.
like
Yeah.
things that I'd see, but it wasn't really culturally Texas but until like a few years later. And so when I moved to from Texas I moved to Regina, and again I was like it was just like what the hell is this, like my whole life was just constantly being uprooted from one place to the next. And um my first friend that I met when I moved there was his older brother, who I still to the day kind of like always give him the love because he really showed me everything. And through him, he was like the coolest guy in school, and he worked at HMV, and he had all the dopest hip hop. Like, so he right away, this is 92, 93. He's like, yo, you guys gotta check this shit out. He's showing us like Wu-Tang and Snoop Dogg, like when it came out, Lords of the Underground, like all of this stuff where I was like, whoa, like this is so crazy. And
Yeah.
so he got to this point where he was driving me to school and we were bumping like he got me really in like Ice Cube was always one of my favorite rappers. And so we're rolling up bumping like like bumping like The Predator like when it came out, just feeling like, man, I'm so cool like with my friend's older brother. His name's Chris Kent and he's actually a
Yeah, and
school.
around a bunch of people who have no idea what that music is, or like probably are turning their head wondering what the fuck is happening over there. Yeah.
Totally, and through him and his brother Nick, they were just culturally kind of like aware of stuff, and so like really, I really looked up to my friend Nick, and he was like through his brother, he made us cool, and like we were kind of like, and I guess through that love, it just kind of started discovering rap, but I still didn't really start rapping until a bit later. It was more just like what I would do is I memorized all the lyrics and then I would draw like every rap album cover. Like I found actually a bunch of drawings of, Gravediggers covers, all these things where I was just like, weirdly, that was largely due to I found that black people were easier to draw than white people. And so I just started drawing all these rap covers, and that was how I really started to do art and portraits. Um, so yeah, that was kind of where it started, and then it just like branched off from there. But another big factor was skateboarding. So like
Yeah.
at the time I started skateboarding in 1995, and
That's
before the
another question I got on the list here, man, was how big of an influence was skateboarding? Because I heard in It Was All a Dream, you're talking about like used to hang out floating kickflips or whatever. And I thought like I think skateboarding was a door that really opened up a lot of, a lot of kids' attention to hip hop, right? Like just even the Tony
Totally.
Hawk video games and stuff introduced a lot of people to a lot of stuff that they weren't otherwise hearing, right?
Absolutely. Like the first like gateway or the gate for me for that was like these 411 videos where, we would watch them thousands of times and like these people to me were gods. Like the skaters alone, but they would always have the dopest music. Like this is where I learned about like Del the Funky Homo Sapien and Souls of Mischief
Yeah.
and and all that stuff. And I'd be like, whoa, what is this? Like, so I would like watch the part, but half the time I'm watching it because I like the song because I didn't know where to. And then I'd go to HMV and be like, oh, do you have this CD? Like, looking at the credits. And, but really skateboarding, and it's something that I've kind of come back around to, was honestly like the best thing that ever happened to me as far as like my own, personal life, as far as making friends that lasted forever and giving me confidence. Like, I used to be a really shy kid. And just like it showed me style, it showed me like all these things that I think are so important. And I really kind of didn't realize that at the time, but through that it just like also like my obsessive behaviors of like you gotta, it really weeds out the, like it takes a certain breed of people to stay skateboarding for 30 years or
That's the
keep.
thing, man. Dude, I was just gonna say, like, the thing about skateboarding for me that I've always put as a parallel to like learning to MC or really learning any art is that there's so much emphasis on just you to practice it, right? It's nobody's
Exactly.
gonna train you how to go out and become a better skateboarder, really. I mean, now there are
No,
people doing that on Instagram or whatever, but certainly in the 90s there weren't or whatever. And there, of course, were skate videos where you'd see the pros doing amazing shit, but like you could just tell, like, okay, these are people who have practiced and practiced and practiced. So I'm going to take this skateboard and go over to that parking lot and practice and practice and practice it. And I feel like that's very similar to, seeing the amazing MCs that we've all grown up
yeah.
listening to doing amazing things on records and then going and putting in the time to actually be able to do something that looks something like that, and has our own twist on it or whatever, right? But yeah.
Oh, honestly, you're bang on, and it was like the funny thing is like they used to sell skateboard videos like albums. Like it was like you would sell tons of VHS tapes. Like and you would watch them so much. Like I would buy them. I would buy VHS tape
Yeah.
twice because I wrecked the other one because I watched it too many times. And so the one thing about, and then it didn't take long because skateboarding and hip hop and punk rock music also, which also was like I was really into as well.
Yeah.
They all went hand in hand like all through the 90s. And the whole message of like, whether it was Public Enemy or like Propaganda or Bad Religion or whatever, it was the
Yeah.
same message to me. And I just
For
vibed with
real.
it right away. And
Yeah.
as someone who was like, you know, you know, maybe even low key like, autistic or like ADHD as a kid, not knowing it, um, it just made me feel accepted.
Yeah.
And so like when I started like meeting those people, I just felt like it didn't matter how old you were or what race you were or what, where you came from, but everyone was just there and you're like, man, I just did a kickflip. Like, and then you'd be like, let's go try to learn how to this. And that community itself is now something that I always feel like I'm trying to get back to because it was the most beautiful thing that it just organically landed in my lap, and it was all because of skateboarding and moved into other things. But yeah, I really feel like it changed my life in the most, cliche way possible for the best way possible. So
No, man, that resonates with me, dude. As I grew up, small town prairies or whatever as well. And like, just what you were saying about like kind of feeling cool because you were up on the new hip hop that other people around you didn't know or whatever. Like that was very much my jam. I always was trying to play music for people, and even now it's like maybe on that slightly autistic vibe, I'm still trying to play all this fucking music for people. Every week I can't stop trying to push music on people. So it's like, but I think the culture's changed so much now with the internet that it's so
mhm.
easy to find stuff that it's almost like a different problem now. Like it used to be this like scarcity epidemic, so you'd have to know somebody to show you the cool music and then like
Yeah.
get HMV to order it. Where now they're like isn't really that anymore, but I kind of see there's a new problem where like everything is so dominated by, billions of dollars and the
Mhm.
market being locked down by these huge companies that I don't know. It still feels cool to like dig a little deeper and find the underground music
Yeah,
and be listening to something that wasn't promoted to me by a bunch of billionaires, but
totally,
yeah, man,
man.
I do my best to try to push music out there to people. And very much I think it was just something that was like easy to fixate on that like helped me feel like I had an identity or whatever, right? So yeah, I can definitely resonate with everything you were just saying there, man. That's
Yeah,
uh
it's and that I think that's the thing about like I've had so many talks and realizations about underground culture where at the time I didn't even realize it, but how lucky we were to be a part of that and to like because it is so different now. Like, like before the internet or YouTube or any of this stuff, like you had to know somebody who like figured it out.
yeah,
And now it's very easy, like and there's pros and cons to it. But like as far as originality and style, that was what I loved about underground rap. Like, wow, this guy sounds weird as fuck. Like you do listen to like Orko the Alien or something, and then you're like, or this is like so cool, but I love it. Or like even people like Epic, like
yeah,
you're like someone who's just judging it based on that their favorite rapper is Lil Yachty or whoever, they're not gonna get it.
right.
But to me, I'm like, man, that's the most original sounding, awesome, and it's so you, and I love it. And
For real.
and
Yeah,
those,
shouts to Epic. He might actually be in chat. He was excited
oh,
when I told him I was talking to you today. So I don't know if
hell
he
yeah,
came through or
man, I
not, but
love
yeah,
Epic and just that like when it comes to like that community, it's so dope. And I I fought I fought and I even misunderstood it until now. And now when I look back at the the all the things that I and all the people and communities I've been a part of, my fondest memories and are from that, from those places and those
right.
times. Wow, like that was really special. And I don't know if that's ever going to exist again. This is even skateboarding pre, you weren't skating to film it. Like you were maybe on a beta cam or something, but you were doing it because you loved it and
Yeah,
you were obsessed with it. The same way that you were putting together mixtapes with two cassette players and doing it because you loved it and you were like, man, I cannot wait to show my friend this. That was really what the internet was your circle of friends. And I saw this conversation with Andre 3000 that really struck me. I don't know if you saw that thing where he was talking about how he didn't care about anyone else's opinion except the Dungeon family. That's it.
yeah, yeah,
And
man.
that's how it was. It was like, and I was like, man, that's exactly how it was. Like, I could care less what anyone else thought, but it was like, did my friends think it was dope? Then it was good,
And
and
that's how you emerge with a regional sound, right? Like that, or with a unique sound, maybe even more so than regional. Just how unique sounds develop is in those chambers where
yeah,
there's five MCs kind of pushing each other and taking from each other's styles or whatever a little bit and building together
totally.
like that. Yeah, man.
And, and that was that
Um,
whole, yeah, sorry.
Oh, no worries, man. I
I'm sorry.
don't let me cut you off. But I was going to ask, like, I think it's about building community there. Like you're talking about the feeling of actually having community around you. And looking at the landscape of music over the past 20 years, one place where I see that sense of community and everybody kind of pushing to support each other really is with the like kind of EDM and festival community, right?
Totally.
It seems like there's a lot of love out there, and people willing to kind of be open to new artists and to hearing new things and new sounds and whatnot. It seems like it's one of the most inclusive communities that there is going right now, in that
Mhm.
same way. But I wanted to kind of ask about like, can you contrast what it's like performing and existing in that landscape more so compared to in the hip hop landscape um, prior to it, or even performing for EDM crowds compared to performing for hip hop crowds or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be, again, I'll try to keep it short, but I have a lot to say about this.
All
Um,
good, man. I'm here for as long as you want to talk.
okay, sweet. Yeah, so essentially when I started, as hip hop has evolved drastically and regionally, nationally, and globally in different ways. And so in Canada, there used to be a point where you could travel East Coast to West. It was hard not being ultra famous or not being this, just because there was, you go out to Toronto, play the $5 rap show. You could come out to Vancouver, play Monday Night Live. You could holler at me and Factor in Saskatchewan. You could hit up John Smith and Macaron and all those guys in Winnipeg and play there. And Calgary, you had like Cam the Wizard and like, Dragonfly Empire, all these guys, and we were all just buddies. Like it was like a very really, when you thought about it, and then you got the Rascals and Swollen Members and all these things, it was such a small community. And so when that was thriving, everyone was doing their own thing, and we weren't even really thinking globally. We were just thinking nationally because that's all you knew, and it was just in these blocks. And over the years it just started to feel like that. I started to feel the change and the idea of like what hip hop was, where it's, I gotta learn how to DJ, I gotta learn how to graffiti, I gotta learn how to beatbox. You're like, you're trying to do as many elements as you can, and then you realize, well, I suck at these ones, so fuck those ones. I'm just gonna focus on these ones. But that
Right.
was it. Like, everyone had a dope hand style, well, sort of, but everyone, it was just a part of the culture. And as soon as like what you talked about, especially the early 2000s, it slowly started changing. And I just got into sort of an argument slash, I don't know, I guess conversation about this whole thing with Drake and how it changed. And I really have never enjoyed him or his music. And
I'm right there with you, man. Yeah, I felt left out when the entire because at first, for the first few years of Drake emerging onto the scene, like I downloaded that mixtape, the first whatever the fuck it was called,
yeah,
mixtape he put out, and I listened to it and was like, well, I'm just not the target audience for this. Like, I just don't really want to hear R&B blended hip hop like this. That's just kind of not really my thing most of the time. There's the odd time it's done really well that I like, but like I heard it and was like, this guy is aiming at a lane that isn't me,
yeah,
and he hit that lane and took it
he
and,
really did.
went super, super mainstream. But now, yeah, now there's all this commentary about like, oh, he's the best because he did the most numbers. And it's like,
No,
I
it's
don't know, McDonald's
there
sold the most cheeseburgers, but
you
that's
go.
not the best burger. You can't tell me that.
Man, it totally feels, and that's, and I know we can come back to the Drake thing because I'm going to finish this conversation about EDM and the fusion of it, because
Sure.
I do have a lot to say about that. And I was mentioning that because that was a pivotal point where it started to change. And like at before pre-Drake, and this is like 2000, it wasn't until So Far Gone or whatever that it was still like the best dudes were like the Rascals, Swollen, Cardinal, Socrates, Classified, Shad, and
Yeah.
Shad was just coming out, and like, and then Sweatshop, and like those were the dudes, like, and that was the sound of Canada. It was like we were in this weird time capsule where US hadn't really taken over. And yes, it was small, but it was also, again, it was beautiful in its own way. And so then around that time, like I was DJing too, like I would always be like, people play Drake. I'm like, I guess. Like, like you're playing these pubs, clubs, whatever, and like you do it. And some songs I'd be like, this is all right. Like, and people would be like, man, he's the greatest rapper ever. Lil Wayne supported him, doing all these things. And you're like, I mean, not for me. Like, I'm listening to like Fushnikins and like random other stuff, and I'm like, this is rap, rock
Right.
him. And then, so for there was about a period of about 10 from 2010 to 2015 where I was really still trying to be that, trying to keep that vibe alive, but only it getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the people that liked it, that would used to just come out for rap, they stopped coming out to shows and they started
Yeah.
going to those kind of shows. And so I was seeing like, at one point you would go to like a Souls of Mischief show or a Dilated People show, and there would be like thousands of people. And then I'd see, not to no disrespect to them, they're like the pillars of and so dope. And you would see shows like that suffering where you're like, wow, there's only like 300 people at this show. Like, that's insane. What the hell happened? And
Yeah.
so it was just that I think that the elements of hip hop is kind of like, it was almost like the foundation of what kept it in its shape as far as underground, and kept it, there was morals, there was ethics. It was about being unique, and it was about like, you doing these things, versus now where it's about sounding the exact same or trying to catch
Right.
the coattails of someone else. And that was the big difference. And so for the longest time, I just kept getting like basically my heart broken because I'm like, well, fuck, I don't understand. Like it was working fine, and now it's not working. And at the time, you know, I was with Sweatshop Union as a touring member at that time, and we were all kind of going through that, like, and people having kids, and you're going through life and as it comes at you, and you know, we were so we're this is like 2010, I think it was 2010, and it was Shambhala. So I go there and I was like, I'd never really been to a proper rave. You know, I didn't even really know what Shambhala was. So I go in there and I'm just like, whoa,
Would have been a shock. Yeah.
this is crazy. Like I didn't even I like heard like and what kind of sucked me in at first was this hybrid trap music that they were making. And it was like, you know, at the time it was like people like I think Earl Graham or like Flosstradamus and like and but the one tying thing for me was Matt the Alien. And Matt the Alien I knew through like circa mixtapes, like mid 2000s. Like we had done a couple shows together and I was friends with like Scratch Bastard and these dudes who were kind of like starting out there and doing their thing. And I remember Matt the Alien was like he was playing and he was really into dubstep at the time because he's ahead of us. He's from the UK. Like he knows the good shit. And like big shouts to Matt the Alien, by the way.
Yeah.
Um and so he was playing at this stage and I he's like come like check it out. So I'm watching this guy play dubstep to like pretty big crowd and just seeing the lights and everything and being like, wow, I think I get it. Like this is actually really crazy. I've never seen anything like this or heard anything like this. And 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 at that same time I was linked in with like emotions and Stylist, who are both, you know, in my opinion, pioneers of electronic rap. They had just made their first song that was like this. And I think it was honestly one of the first things I've heard anyone from Canada do. And it was this remix of a song they had called Wild Style. And I heard it and I was like, whoa, this is the fucking dopest thing I've ever heard. Like, I love this. And I remember coming back and being like, I'd love to do this, but like, I don't even know who makes this kind of shit. And I
Right.
would shoot people, they'd be like, I'm not making that shit, you know, like, fuck that.
Yeah.
And, and then,
All your hip hop purist producer friends or whatever, kind of.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're all like, no, that's like, I don't want to do that. Like, that's go talk to someone else, and which is fair. And so for a while, I kind of fought that, and like but I didn't ever do it. And it wasn't until I did this song with these guys, Ski Tour, who were playing, and it wasn't even really in that. It was more like a almost like a trap, like drum and bass hybrid song that I made with them, just because I really liked them as people, and they were playing the same stages as me, and as soon as I did that. Something changed in me where I was over those 5 years of me going to Shambhala and seeing it, I started to understand and I started to see all the downfalls of this hip hop and the mentality and everything I loved about it
Yeah.
slowly fading away. And all those things that I lost, I started to find in electronic music, whether it was the community or the progression, how progressive the music itself was. And I became a fan. Like I wasn't even really listening to, but I still wasn't making it yet because I was afraid. I was like afraid of what people would think. But meanwhile, I'm slowly discovering artists being like, man, I love this shit. This is so like it just gives there's this energy that I just haven't ever experienced before. And there was
Can I ask you about that era that you're talking about from 2010 to 2015? Because around those years, I started having, my friends who go to festivals start talking to me about like trap
Mhm.
music. And to me,
Yeah.
trap music was what T.I. was making in 2002 or whatever, right? Like, but they were completely unaware of that trap music and like that's what trap music came from, the trap or whatever. And like it was now an EDM dance craze. And I was like, I don't know, I never was at the places to honestly get into it much, but like were these actual like remixes of rap rappers or like because trap is
You know
still
what
a
it
thing
was?
and it's not that anymore, right? Like now it's very much so hip hop again, a hip hop sound, I
Yeah.
feel like. But yeah,
You
what
know what
was
it,
trap at that point, man?
so what it was every single genre of electronic music takes a little bit from hip hop, whether it's a little vocal snippet on like house music or a little thing on this. And so what they had taken was basically the BPM, which is like, 65 to 75 BPM, And so you
Right.
have this like, you know, so yes, there was tons of remixes of that, but what they changed and what was different, and it wasn't really lyric focused, it was energy focused. And so you have like the difference really that I found, and this is what definitely discovered when I was trying to do these hybrid sets that were all over the place. But you have these builds and drops in electronic music that are so contagious, and it
Yep.
doesn't matter what the fuck the person's saying, but you hear it,
Impossible to
yeah,
ignore as it yeah
yeah, like you
builds.
could be doing push-ups and you're like, oh my God, it's coming, the drop. Yeah. And then you push it. And there's not any lyrics in the world that are gonna make me feel that way. And so I
Right.
started to kind of see that and was like, damn, this is really cool. Like, and it was a mix of like early dubstep that had evolved. Like, and at the time you have guys like Skrillex and Excision and other people in that world who are making kind of now what turned into bro step, which is like really heavy, just like, whoa, like our American version of what the UK started.
Okay.
And so when I started to really look into it, and I was like, damn, you know what, this whole time I thought this shit was all just like four to the floor music, but these guys are way ahead of us. Like everything about it culturally, this is a culture that's respecting the DJ again. And we had lost that as rappers. It was all
Yeah.
like, I don't even need a fucking DJ. It was just like,
Right.
you know, and that's where the respect, that's the difference. And so
Well,
you
and
had
even when you said that it all had taken that every EDM takes something from hip hop or whatever, I wanted to say like, well, yeah, it's all built on turntables, right? It's there's a
totally,
DJ, so without the hip hop DJ, that wouldn't have been a thing, I think, in the first place, right? Like all that
no.
dance music came from DJing. So yeah,
And yeah, so like that, so as it was growing, I was just like, I was starting to resonate with it more and more. And then, yeah, and then it was just a matter of time before I finally, it's funny enough, I compare it to when I started skateboarding. Like when the first like 6 months I skated, because I was friends with like jocks and like all these other weird things in the 90s. I was kind of embarrassed to walk around with my skateboard. But like about 6 months into it, I was like, you know what? I'm a skater. And that's what I am, and I love it. I don't care what you think about me because it
yeah,
wasn't cool to skateboard then. The same
right,
way it still might not be cool to rap over electronic music. But when I felt it and I really embraced it, and all these people were like so nice to me, and I felt the same acceptance that I did because to be honest, I always felt like an outsider in rap music because I didn't live in the right place. I didn't sound the way that was
yeah.
thing. I wasn't gangster enough. I wasn't this. I was
Compared to mainstream hip hop, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, and it was just like in that world, I just was like, no one was judging anything. If anything, it was the opposite. It was back to like, how different and weird can we make this, but it's still going to make you move. But the real big difference is that it focuses on like movement and dance, and hip hop lost that a little bit. And like, yes, there was, but the other beautiful thing about it, and this is again, right time, right place. Shambhala is founded on absolutely no connection to commercialism. They don't allow any
right.
sponsorship, and that's why it is what it is. It's the purest form of underground music probably in the world. Like, and you have these people who own this land. They don't allow any of this and anything near it. Yes, there's some people who come in and out of it, but you're never going to see a beer advertisement, anything. Can't even drink there legal. You're not even allowed to like.
Yeah,
And so once you get past the like, oh, it's just a bunch of drug addicts doing this, which I hear all the time, and you actually go there and you watch a show, you watch a drum and bass set, or you watch a thing with the level of production and the level of talent, and everyone, the first argument that rappers will come like, they're not even doing anything, they're just up there pressing buttons, blah blah blah, not realizing like these guys produced these songs, these guys
yeah.
have organized, and whether it's in sync with all this. And it wasn't until I realized that where I was like, damn, this is so much farther beyond. But where it really started to happen to me, and outside of like, obviously like emotions, I just thought a lot of the rappers were kind of whack. And I was like, man, I want to rap on this shit. Like I could kill this beat. And I started doing stuff. And so initially how it all kind of started, it was a joke. And it was a joke because the same way sarcasm works, you do it, you're sort of meaning it, but you're not meaning it. And
Right.
so Pigeonhole, who is now fully in dubstep, who was part of Sweatshop Union, we started making this, and this is a funny story. We started making these essentially trap songs as a joke in the car on tour. And um we made up a fake name, and it's still on SoundCloud actually. It's called Ibiza Swag, and it was the two funniest things at the time, swag and this whole Ibiza thing. And so we made this account and we made up this fake story that we could just make these stupid songs for fun. And it got so crazy that we were focusing all our energy on that because we thought it was hilarious and not making sweatshop songs or
Was it
Tetris.
because it was getting a lot of attention that you were like, oh shit, we got to keep doing this more? Like,
No, it was because some of the songs were popping off more than our other songs on SoundCloud,
right.
but nobody knew about it. It was more of a joke that this was the only way that we could do it and nobody judge us. And so we didn't tell anyone about it. And it's like sometimes every once in a while I'll go back to the page and be like, wow, like, and every song started with Ibiza. So it was like Ibiza Nights, Ibiza Breeze, Ibiza this,
Okay.
Ibiza.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Colin from Pigeonhole really went it because he's like one of the most creative people I've ever met in my life. And so, but the thing is,
I love it that the dude named Pigeonhole is who helped you kind of break out of the box with the new sound. That's beautiful.
dude, and it's even crazier because they had to really tackle that because in my opinion, outside of emotions but they were the first as who were like really dope producers too. And um so they started to get so good at it to the point where I was like, man, like, why are we even doing this? Like you guys sound as good as all the people that we're watching. So why don't you just make it? And that was the point where they did, and they made this album which in my opinion is one of the foot the laid the path for a lot of it. They had an album called Chimp Blood, totally different than what they do now, but it was like this perfect mix of dope, unique hip hop and electronic production in their own way. And it came out on UrbNet in 2012. And
Nice.
it's got a life of its own. But weirdly, and this is the battle that I'm still facing, um, they they were doing their thing and they were all over the place. We were all into like Moombaton. I don't know if you know what Moombaton is. And Moombaton is basically like a little bit faster version of reggaeton, which like this is like
Right.
what guys like Diplo and Dylan Francis, they were first doing this sound, and they just basically took it from like the Brazilian favelas and brought it to mainstream music. And I remember when I first heard it in 2010, it was the same time as trap. My first thought was like, shit, this is gonna be big. Like it's dope. And fast forward 6 years later, it was the biggest genre of music out, and people didn't even realize it. Like Drake, One Dance, that's a Moombaton, that's taken from it. Sorry by Justin Bieber, like all those like
Okay.
100, 105 to 108 with the Latin sound, they just didn't have as heavy drops. But that was purely because of Diplo and all these people who were bringing Moombaton. And so I saw trends happen 6 years before they happened. And then when it finally happened, I was like, I knew it. I should have done that. Like, but and then it stopped and now it's into a different thing. And now you're almost revisiting this 2010, 2015 trap stuff. But yeah, so that just kept happening over and over. And so I started doing it in 2015, and it's definitely, in my opinion, it's still in its infancy of the fusion of rap and electronic music. But to
Yeah,
me, it makes the most, it's the next logical step for both of the things
I would
because
agree, man. Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
because and it's gonna take, and I remember before Skrillex's last record came out, I was saying, man, all it's gonna take is like Justin Bieber to hop on a drum and bass track and then it's on. Or like so one of these people, and then you started to see these kind of big Trippy Red was on one, and then Fred again comes out. And then you start to see these things, and then Lil Yachty's rapping on drum and bass, whatever. And it's still like even when the first thing for in commercial was when Jay-Z and Kanye, they sampled the Flux Pavilion song for that I Can't Stop. That was
Right.
initially a big dubstep song. And so they saw it. And at that time, I was like, damn, this is about to take over. But then nothing happened. Like North America never really saw it or accepted it. And rappers were still so close-minded and stuck in this thing.
That's
And
the
so
thing. Yeah. It was tough to convince any MC with any chops to get up there and rhyme over some drum and bass stuff, right?
I'm a bit. And
Yeah.
you get to this point now where it's like, so it took me like before I could even get any of the type of slots that I get now, or I'll play at 10, 11 p.m. before a big dubstep or drum and bass act. That was not unheard of because rap wasn't even categorized in EDM. It was, oh, we'll put you in the hip hop showcase that's in the
Right.
afternoon on Sunday. And
Yeah.
so that was a battle that I had to fight every time. I was like, well, I want to play that. And so I was living this dual lives of like going on tour and playing shows with like someone like Greaves or Sage Francis one night, and then the other night, I met, some of the guys when I started doing it would be like, come out with us, and I played to like these 2,000 person crowds, and
Right.
they would bring me out, pay me well, and I'd be like, well, fuck, why am I doing this? Like, I want to do
Yeah.
that,
Dude,
and
that makes so much sense to me because I mean, like, it's not like you can't rap over something people can dance to, right? Like, it's just
very much,
rhythms. It's that's the way I've always looked at it. To me, one of the crowning achievements of an MC or a mark of like mastery of the craft is that they can kind of jump on anything and do
yeah.
something that's still going to sound like them, right? And any of the best MCs, you can point to a lot of different styles that they've done over the years, and I think versatility is just like highly undervalued. Like you were saying, now everybody wants to have one sound and kind of stick to it or whatever.
Hmm.
But I appreciate when artists kind of switch it up or whatever. So yeah, could you see yourself ever going back to making a more purist sound again, like just
Yeah,
for
I mean,
the sake of it later? Yeah.
definitely. Like, and I have a couple songs that I've done. Like, funny enough, like a couple years ago, I was gonna do a project, and who knows, maybe it still happened. Like, Classified had sent me a bunch of hip hop beats, and funny enough,
Right.
I didn't really do anything with them, but because I was so focused on like figuring out. But I was also dealing with this. So I had moved out of hip hop, but I was in this purgatory where I wasn't quite EDM, but I wasn't quite hip hop anymore. So I couldn't do a show opening up for Sage Francis because I didn't fit in. But the big change for me, and this is what I was going to talk about, how it all really happened was in 2015, I was feeling really lost. Like I was just like, well, everything I love is gone. And like I don't even know my analogy at the time was like I'm trying to win the Kentucky Derby with a donkey. It's never going to happen.
Right.
Like, and I do want to be, we all want to be commercially successful and financially comfortable, but it's just not going to happen doing underground rap anymore.
Right.
And my love for the two was just purely what was stopping me was just ego. And so I went on this trip that I didn't really get paid. I went to like Denver, I went to LA, I went to couple other places. And on that trip, the whole point of it was just like, I gotta figure out what I'm doing. And everywhere I went, I just started to see these versions of electronic music. And on the trip, I was painting a mural in Denver with this other homie, and I met this dude, Late Night Radio. And he didn't even really know, he didn't know anything about me. And my friend took me to this show, and it was like a sold out show in Boulder, Colorado, like 1,000 people. And he had kind of taken this sound of, he was like a Pretty Lights uh I guess protege sort of, and I would just remember being like, whoa, this is so dope. This is like hip hop, but it's like got bass, and it's like at the time was labeled as electro soul. And I remember coming back being like, whoa, this is so crazy. I met him briefly, and then I went back there again because I was still actively doing murals, and I went to paint this mural with my homie. And the same guy who was a pro snowboarder slash promoter, and he was like, yo, I talked to Late Night Radio. He likes your stuff. um, I got to do some stuff and we don't have to paint till tomorrow. I'm going to drop you off at his house. And so I just went to this total stranger's house, never, only other than that one meeting, and he dropped me off and we made this song. And then it was cool because he had never worked with a rapper and it still really wasn't happening at the time. Like, and so we started doing it, which slowly turned into Small World, which we still kind of kept in this hip hop format. And then eventually we did another album. Well, he did a remix project first. He remixed Wildlife, and then we did. So we've done 3 albums plus a bunch of things. But Late Night Radio changed my life, and I
Nice.
was seeing him do play these massive crowds and be such a unique sound. And he was sharing that with me and allowing me to come just get a taste of his world in Colorado, which Denver has one of the greatest scenes in music right now. And I would see like in that time we were making these albums, he was playing things like Red Rocks and being like, "Do you want to come rap on a song at Red Rocks?" And I was like, "Are you
Hell
kidding
yeah.
me?" Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I would go do these things, and he was living. We recorded this album in uh in this other guy who was also initially Pretty Lights was 2 people. This guy named Michael Menner, and he was living with him. So we recorded this Small World in his basement over 3 different sessions, where we would do like 5 songs every time. And just seeing that and being like, this is the world that I want to be in, but it doesn't exist here. And I don't know how to get it here. So I'd bring him up here and we would try to do these things. And but we never really went in on it and toured it. And, you know, we're still really good friends and have our own trajectories, but he was already popping. So it wasn't like he needed to be me there all the time. And he has managers and agents and so I started to just really see these people where I'm like, wow, we're all up here in Canada living off grants, thinking that we're doing well. Meanwhile, these guys are down here selling out two,
Huge
five
shows.
thousand person venues, and they're doing
Yeah.
real numbers with real underground culture, nothing to do with mainstream music. And I
Right.
started to see that, and then it, with him, and then another artist that I work with, who's also one of my best friends, K-Lab. He was really pioneering this glitch hop sound, where I was like, this is what I want to do. And now it was just the final bridge to me to make, oh, this is hip hop, but it's this too. And so now it's weird because people look at us as pioneers of it. And there's songs that I've made that I had never walked into a party and heard my song playing like a DJ. I regularly go to shows or down the street and I hear someone being like, oh, that's my song because
Yeah.
it's, and I started catering and it wasn't, I watched this show, that Nas show Get Down.
Right.
And that really solidified it where I was like, at what point did we forget about the DJ? Like, why am I not working with all the DJs I know because they're the best DJs in the world?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I just fully reverted and was like, all right, I guess I gotta say bye. And so the album Weddings and Funerals was much more of an analogy of of me letting go of the past of what died, of everything I loved, and being married to this new concept
To the new
outside of
thing.
the thing.
Yeah,
And
man. That
that
makes a lot of sense, dude. I think like what you were saying about it being in 2015 or whatever, and thinking to yourself, the thing I love died. I think a lot of artists were facing that same thing around that same time because that was right around the time when like the mainstream and you know my even my hip hop head buddies were starting to like Drake. You know, they were starting to just be like, okay, well this is what's cool now. And I was really just like, I guess that the thing I loved is dead or whatever. But it's interesting hearing you talk about going from that position to moving forward to a new thing because I've also talked to a lot of guys like this is, you know, interview 80 or 90 or whatever with different Canadian artists at this point. And a lot of the
Mhm.
guys talk about like there's been a boom bap resurgence. You know, and you can look at
Absolutely.
like Griselda in the mainstream and like the kind of grimy boom bap sound has also done a comeback. And I think that that was a result of a lot of guys in 2015 going, what the fuck? What happened to the stuff we like? Right. And so they started really laying into that path. And, you know, it's a different lane to success where like you're relying on 100 fans who will buy the vinyl or whatever,
Yeah.
more so than going out and doing shows to thousands and thousands of people necessarily. But yeah, man, just the contrast between the two of those things. You were talking about like that exists in America or did exist in America then. Do you feel
Mhm.
like the festival scene has evolved in Canada to the point where now it exists up here as well?
It it's still in its infancy, and so I was gonna say, like, I still regularly face as many hurdles and rejections as I do because I do what I do, versus
Right.
if I was just a DJ. And I used to think that I could really change it and like be like, man, I'm gonna be the first to change this. And only in the past 2 years, like especially last year, if I haven't even really addressed this, but the reason I stopped playing with the DJ was because it was one thing that's a lot of people were suggesting me. If you want to be an EDM act, you gotta play your own music because and not like not talking about music that I made. I'm talking about me, the one pressing the buttons.
Chris,
And
I
so,
wondered if you do that or not. I wanted to ask if that's how your show goes. Like, are you your own DJ and then you've got a microphone as well? Or,
well, I dabbled with it for a long time. So like I was rolling and like big shows. Like my DJ for 3 years, I was started with me and this guy named Bricks. And then he kind of stopped and we parted ways in 2018. And then immediately I started rolling with DJ Chemo, who was like my childhood, you know, Rascals were my favorite. They made my favorite rap
yeah,
song ever from Canada. And so Chemo, like we had kind of talked a bit. And when I presented him, I'm like, hey, I'm kind of looking for a DJ. Like, and so I'm bringing him to like raves and stuff. And we rolled together. And then obviously COVID kind of screwed all that up. And then it wasn't until last year where he was supposed to be my DJ at Shambhala, and he, you know, it's not always the most profitable scenario to bring someone like that, or like, and even in general, So I just kind of like decided like maybe maybe I should try this because I was really resistant against the idea of not having a DJ because to me that was what was making me unique. And
Right.
Pigeonhole went through this. They actually had to stop rapping in order to get to the level that they did in dubstep. And so they stopped rapping and I was like, "No, you shouldn't do that. Like that's what makes you dope." But they stopped doing that. In 2 years they were playing Coachella. And
Yeah.
so, it was a matter of like, you got to understand that people only accept culture in very small doses. And a lot of people who like certain things are only going to like that. And if you bring in something that's so fucking out of that, they're not going to get it. And so,
Yeah.
where the Canadian music industry is at now, and the reason I want to talk about this, and I don't want to throw shade at anyone because I've I've gotten so many amazing opportunities and I know that a lot of what I'm doing right now, it's paving the way for maybe like a new sound of this or maybe MCs who are like proper MCs who are going to be doing storytelling and all these different bringing these different elements that to rap. But the one most humbling thing about it all and why maybe it hasn't happened is because when it comes to DJs and producers, they're still trying to make dance music. So, you can't have three verses of rap and rap, 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 rap. There needs to be
Right.
beats, there needs to be musical elements, and you also have to be a part of that community. And so, also subject wise, you can't come in talking about some dumb shit, although people are sampling dumb shit all the time.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
so, so as much as I'd like to say like they have accepted it, there's many things that I could say no, they haven't at all, and it is so in their infancy because especially post lockdown where you have the industry itself is just crippled, especially in Canada. Um, People only want sellout scenarios. And so this is the big difference. And I didn't understand this until last year. So I start doing my own thing and I'm like, all right, so I'm playing for MIDI controllers and doing everything myself again. And the first show that I did that at with, Anderson .Paak was in the crowd and came up to me and was like, he thought exactly why I was doing it. He came and said to me, "Man, did you make all those beats too? Like that's crazy. I never seen anyone do this." And I
Right.
was just like, "Holy shit, the most talented guy on the planet thinks that I made these beats. Like this is right. This is what I
Yeah.
want." And so
That's incredible.
I went really hard with that and it kept happening. And now it's like, but funny enough, there's even sometimes where people are like, I think in that world, they're like, maybe you're still rapping too much and maybe you need to cut it back because in the end, EDM is a DJ's world. It's not a vocalist world. It's not just rappers. It's not a vocalist world. You can't name one North American vocalist who is a headlining EDM act. There's
Bro,
not one.
you just triggered something. Okay, so what if somebody was all four elements? I mean, we've talked about three. Do you break dance as well?
I'm terrible at breakdance.
Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe the motherfucker who's out there who's mastered all four of those things could do the perfect EDM show, right? Where like when
Yeah.
the beat drops or whatever, he fucking spins on his head.
Well, you know what it is though?
The b-boy. Oh,
You know what it is, and this is something that you're gonna also find with DJs. The ceiling for being a DJ you can only get so far until you start producing and playing your own music and being known and making music that other DJs want to play, whether that's edits, remixes, or originals. And so the difference between me and this is part of the process. The first hurdle that I had to face was electronic festivals being like, well, we don't want start and stop music. It needs to be
yeah,
like a DJ set. So me and Bricks really were part of this, like, okay, well, let's just make it like a DJ set. Like our sets will be a mixtape. And we put one out in 2018 from our Shambhala set at the Amp, and it was exactly like a mixtape. There were so many fine details. We'd play like two originals, one other song, one remix, two originals, one this. And, that wasn't, in a weird way, that didn't work for me because I was like, well, I want to do my music.
right.
And so I spent all last year building this thing, but still to the day, I still am facing this. There's some festivals who fully accept it, but even some of the bigger ones I play, they still don't really want to take the risk because it's the community. And so what I'm spending this whole year doing, and there was I talked to so many different people in so many genres, like, what is stopping this from becoming what it is? And a lot of it was like, well, maybe you do need to focus in on one thing. Like instead of being like drum and bass, trap, house music, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, well, what do I love most? It's bass hop and it's glitch hop. And so I kind of was like, all right, I'm going to focus on this. I still got lots of other stuff in that way. So in 2021, I started making this album that I guess we can talk about next. Um, And the idea was like, well, how could I ever really think that I would be accepted in electronic music if I've never made an electronic album? And at
Right.
the time, I had already had features with big dudes, and still bigger and bigger DJs start hollering at me to do this. And there's really only one other person who's kind of on the same level. It's a rapper named Prob Kaz. And he was an MC as well. And he was for 6 years working with one of the biggest dubstep producers in the world, which is Grizz. And Grizz retired last year. So now he's moving into the same thing, but we've gone in two different ways where he's doing DJ sets because he's working with all the biggest electronic guys, as where I tried the DJ thing. I didn't like it. And I DJ, but when I DJ, I want to DJ, not and so it's almost like that's going to be another side shoot of what I'm doing. But what I was like, I still want to do what I'm doing. So I manage another artist, and he had this setup that really made sense to me, and we were involving visuals, and I was watching what my friend Caleb was doing. I was like, damn, like you guys are really doing this, like maybe this is what I got to do. And so they kind of helped me build this hybrid setup. And the first show I did, like I said, it was Anderson Paak was there, and like it was so monumentally felt so good. And I was like, I was able to play other people's music because it still looked like I was doing something. I didn't have that awkward like, oh, I'm not doing anything. Like, what am I gonna do
Right.
right now? And
Yeah.
no one knows the difference of like, because at these festivals, not everyone knows your shit. 80% of the crowd has no idea who you are. Like,
Right.
or for the most part, unless you're really established. And so you're doing something, but in their head, you made all the music. And so it was funny the respect and how much of just that one little thing shifted everything. And I think all it's going to take, like, I would love to be the guy that gets to ride the wave in and be like, man, Def3 paved the way for that, and be the one who gets, maybe I will, maybe I still can, maybe I won't. But all I've been saying for the past decade is whoever is the first rapper or rap group that really embraces this in North America, it's going to be huge. I guarantee it. And at first I was really set on making a rap group with it. And I had initially even kind of proposed this idea to the other guy that I was just talking about. But at the time, he was so popping with Grizz that he's like, I don't know, it's just we could do it, but like I don't know. And now we've kind of just doing it in our own ways. But all it's going to take is someone with the style and cultural relevance as Lil Uzi Vert or Kendrick, who also is a dope EDM producer who makes left field electronic music. And as soon as
Right.
that happens, it's going to explode. I guarantee
Yeah.
it. I
Are
absolutely guarantee it. And then every single rapper on the planet is going to start rapping on that stuff.
there any
Like,
other Canadians in the same lane who you could point to just to give props to? Like another thing I always do is ask people to give props to people around them in their community or whatever. And I
mhm.
mean, I don't know. I can only really think of like one group, Ilvis Freshly, that is kind of in the same vein of like what I would think is probably called Aesop. I don't know. I mean, the
Yeah,
subgenres get so niche that it's tough for me to know exactly what they would call themselves, but they're definitely out
oh,
rapping at big festivals or whatever.
yeah,
Um,
those are the homies, and I think they're actually retiring right now. But they were kind of like, yeah, they were a bit different, but yes, they were, through whether it's Mount Doyle or uh Jesus, he was producer too, and they were kind of like whittling down that sound. They were working with like another homie who's on the same age as me, Slink, and I think yeah, they were doing their thing, but I think the only other person that I can think of outside of Emotions is this dude from Toronto named Omar Lynx. And so he was the guy who was like he was rapping with Zed's Dead. And so he's a dope MC. Like I've seen him play, and I don't know how active he is. He kind of has these resurgences or but as far as people who you're gonna see who really can come and command an hour slot at a
yeah,
music festival, I don't think there is any. And
dope, man.
and
I was going to
that's
ask, like, is it a West Coast thing? You just mentioned somebody in Toronto, but I thought maybe that because another thing I wanted to talk to you about was you recently on Threads were talking about um, how it's tough for West Coast Canadians to successfully tour out east and to the East Coast and vice versa, that the East Coast Canadians are having a tough time coming and touring out west or whatever.
mhm.
Um, so I was thinking maybe that has something to do with it. Is just like, is it a West Coast sound? But
Yeah, so here's my the bigger scheme, and maybe we'll just jump right into this because this is also a much bigger topic. And in the end, I look at so when the lockdown happened, at the time you have all these different, underground scenarios going on. Um, but what we thought was kind of going to be the great refresh of like, man, only the real people are going to keep making music. And this is what I legitimately thought this, like, wow, this is the refresh that the industry needs.
Yeah.
All of those huge promotion companies, Live Nation, AEG, Blueprint, and again, no disrespect to any of them. They're just doing what they do. They're being big music companies. They actually bought all the failing venues. They bought all they or they if they didn't buy them, they cut deals with these venues saying, "Well, we're the only ones allowed to do shows here." So what that did, just like in society, the way that essentially fascism works, they basically made it impossible for people to throw left field weird shows without trying to go through them. And in that sense, they're going to charge more for the room, so you're not going to make any money, so it's not going to make any sense. And there's this total domination of these mega companies, and this is the
So that
reason.
happened during COVID because all these places were struggling. So Live Nation came and bought them out. I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, like they bought a lot of them, man. Live Nation owns
Damn.
like
Okay.
half the venues in Vancouver, and same
I
with
mean, I
Blue.
believe it. That's disaster capitalism to a T or whatever, right? They're just coming through to capitalize where they fucking can.
It is,
Yeah.
and some like like obviously, I had worked with a lot of these different like promotions companies on different levels. Like, and I'm not throwing shade at any of them. They're just doing what businesses do, and it works the same way as like, well, I could have a business in this building, and the rent is slowly going to go up, or I could buy the building, and then I have to pay for that, and I could
Right.
start. And so what they did, and you have different versions of it. You have MRG, you have Timber, you have Blueprint, but there is the only club that still has any chance, I think, of doing that, and shout out to my homie Blake from Digital Motion, is the Red Room in Vancouver because his family has had this club for 40 years and he throws one of the best electronic nights in Canada, a weekly that rarely exists. But it's a struggle because you're up against these people who have multi-million dollar investors who
Yeah.
they can lose money. They can lose 500 grand because they can also turn around the next weekend and make 2 million. And so this is the problem with the music industry, and this is why it's so difficult, and it's become even more difficult post lockdown. And a lot of people, you only really realize this, which, you know, once you start to reach the threshold of where the gatekeeping begins. And so once you get to that point, you're going to have these things always thing. If you're not with a big agency, you're not with an agent, you're going to get paid far less. You're going to be much lower billed, and it's not going to be worth it. And so you can go for broke, and each one of those individual promotion companies, they groom artists because they're trying to get the full control of it. And most of them have started booking agencies that also own the festivals, that also own
Right.
this. And it's so much more connected than you think. And again, hopefully I don't get blacklisted for saying this stuff, but this is the reality of the music industry, and it's happening on many different levels, on
Yeah.
streaming, everything. And I can only see this because I've been in the game for long enough to know what it was like before. And so when I used to be, and you can still exist in any small pockets, and like I can holler at Tiny Bar in fucking, Boise, Idaho or whatever, and I could book a show. But the
Yeah.
reality is, you want to play the Commodore, you want to play any of these big venues, you have to be plugged into these things. And you have to be able to start over and be the coffee boy and be like, okay, I'll play for 200 bucks, even knowing that you have hundreds of thousands of monthly listeners or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. And so that was something that I had to kind of accept. And when I used to roll around thinking that I had collected this giant backpack of history and music, being like, well, I've done this, I've played this and like done this. When I was really trying to figure out this shit, how I was gonna get a manager, agent, and I was just getting no, 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 no. No, it was getting to me. I just was brutally honest with this one dude, and I was like, well, what is it? Like, why is it like, why can't I? Like, I don't understand. Like our biggest problem with as artists is we compare and it sucks. Like, because you're looking at things, you're like, well, it's just the same. And he
Yeah.
kind of said something to me that really, like I'll never really forget. And he's like, you know what? You, you hear it on levels, you're only as good as your last song or your last single, your last show. But he's like, everything you did previous to the past 2 years, it doesn't matter because you need to let go of that shit because none of that is helping you right now. What I'm looking at right now is how many shows and how much you've been paid in the markets. And so we all are, we're all like, oh, we need Spotify numbers. There's people paying for this shit, people paying for features, people paying to go on tour. None of
Yeah.
that shit matters. All that matters is how many tickets can you sell in a certain market. That's it. If you're
And
a
the
touring,
promoters aren't just looking at your Spotify numbers to figure that out.
they are and they aren't, but those can be inflated. And so you
Right.
can have times where, and you have these things where because I know promoters and people on both sides of the game, they tell me that. And like managers and agents will be like, well, look at the numbers. But none of those numbers are from Vancouver, and none of those numbers.
Right.
So why would it matter? So you could throw a show and someone could trick you into paying them 10 grand and then only have 100 people show, and you could have got a local
Definitely.
underground
Yeah.
rapper to sell that many tickets. And so they really have this whole other thing that they're facing. So you mix that in with also this idea that the venues have been taken away, the platform. And so it wasn't until I realized that where I was like, shit, this has gotten even harder. Like this is already a really difficult thing to do. To put yourself out there like that, only to constantly be rejected and to constantly, struggle financially and struggle and not get paid what you feel like you're worth. And so my only resolution to it, and what I'm going to tell every single artist and every single person who does anything is you have to build your own community and focus all your energy on building yourself a platform. And that can be in the simplest way possible. Like I see some people doing, accept that social media is what it is and focus on building your community. And that's where I haven't even really started the push that I'm about to do and, claiming something or doing things, but you could literally be like, all right, every Friday I'm going to invite 20 friends over and we're going to film me DJing or me rapping and we'll all do cypher and then we'll post that and that's going to be my community. And then we'll hope that it expands from there because
Build around.
in the end, and this is going to be, I guess, the final point that I'll say on this is you can play a festival year after year after year after year for 10 years. And all of a sudden, one of these big companies buys it and your plug is gone. Guess what? You're never getting booked again. And that's happened to
Right.
me on numerous festivals. And where I'm like, yo, what? I thought we were like working our way up. And they're like, yeah, we decided to go with someone else. And I'm like, shit, well, that was damn. And so what it made me realize after all that time that I spent thinking that I was doing something and building with a certain person, it's not, it's probably not personal, it's just business. But what's happening is what you're saying. Like there are big companies coming in and realizing, and I'm sure it'll get to a point where it's super oversaturated. But unless you have your community, and this could start with an annual event, a monthly, or like
Yeah.
I would highly recommend doing your own label. Start your own label early in your career. Start your own event series. Start your own everything yourself because in the end, that's all that's going to be left when all of that shit changes. And
You
so
ever
for
thought
me,
about starting your own festival actually? Because like I
yeah,
feel like there's still space, out on the prairies. You could start a festival out here, and I think people would probably come to it or whatever. You see them pop up. I actually have friends in Edmonton who have started a festival, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever, and it's still happens annually, and they're building that community just kind of year by year or whatever.
absolutely. And to be honest, that was what I was trying to do. So in 2019, I was just starting to think this way. And being like, shit, like what am I doing? I had kind of given all, I was on other labels. I wasn't doing any of this because I was like, well, it's easier for me to just go with these guys. And not realizing that I gave away my community. And although I was a part of a community, I wasn't profiting from it. And so when I was looking around and hearing the same struggles from different artists who are pretty well-known people and they're still broke as shit, and then they're like, well, how come I'm not like that person? All of a sudden I look, you know why you're not like that person? Because you don't own the label and you're not throwing the events and you're not the
Right.
one that's made a community for yourself that has a life of its own. And so you can have communities within communities. And so in 2019, like I was about to have no, I had already had a baby actually. And so I was really thinking like, shit, man, that's gonna get even harder. How am I gonna fucking survive? So I had a homie who threw me a really big bone, and he threw this. He was actually my first really guy who helped me out ever. With he owned a lot of the venues in Regina, and he now has a chain of restaurants. I think 23 or 24 deep called Leopold's Taverns.
Nice.
And he told me he's like, hey, I do these. At the time, he had a production company. So when like the Junos came to Saskatchewan, they would throw this, and it's called Rock Entertainment. And so he's like, I have this Labor Day event, and we do it every year, and we're only doing one day. So if you want the Saturday, you can have it. It's a festival. It's a literally a package festival ready to go. You just got to pay for all this other shit, the running it.
Yeah.
So we did it, and I ended up partnering with another homie, and we ended up having like 900 people come through, and it was like myself, K-Lab, Neon Steve, a couple other local acts, and it was popping off, and it was like I was like, yo, this is it. This is what we got to do. We've
Yeah.
solved the problem, and then COVID hit, and that company's gone. They sold
Uh,
this. And so it was just like this perfect storm. So now I'm coming back to that. We're like, all right, well, I got to start. So I started doing my own shows again, in these markets, starting with Regina, where I did like, I saw what was happening in the electronic scene with these 360 shows. And I was like, man, doing this as a rap show would be so dope. And you look at the production and trying to merge the two things. And I am about to start doing these kind of like monthly, like almost pop-up house parties where it's like it doesn't really matter how many people are there. It's about the energy. And so the idea with these is that I'm going to do them with like basically all headliner artists and some locals, but you only play unreleased stuff. And it's like this, if you're there, 100-person cap, 200-person cap rooms of people who could easily sell 500 tickets, but if you're there, you're lucky. And
right.
and that's kind of an idea that I got from like a few other homies that I was working with, and I was seeing them do this. One weekend they'd play 30,000-person crowd, and the other time they'd play someone's apartment, and they'd play a pop-up at a donut shop or whatever. And I was
So
like, shit,
with an emphasis on being exclusive or whatever, and kind
stupid.
of only people who really know are there. Yeah.
And I think that's the future. So you need all of it. Yes, it's great to do it, but unless you have control of that, you're a fucking employee.
Yeah. Weird, man. Dude, we have been talking for longer than I thought we have. I just looked at the clock and it's been, I think, 80 minutes or so already. But I do want to talk about this new project. You told me
Yeah.
earlier today that you've got a new project that you're working on. So I would love to keep talking to you about all this stuff, but I do want to make sure we have time to get to this new project. So um, can you just can you talk a little bit about that? I know
Yeah.
you told me you haven't really announced it so much anywhere just yet, but yeah, I'm interested to hear about it, dude. What can people expect there?
So, yeah, so over the past like 3 years, weirdly, it's taken me a while to put it all together. And so yeah, this is the first I've heard of it or anyone's heard of it. Yeah, so I have an album that's going to be coming out this year called Outsider. The term itself, you can understand why.
Yeah.
Um, and so I spent the past 3 years recording a lot of music, and a lot of the songs, it was really me experimenting over that whole time, trying to figure out where I fit in and how it's gonna go. A lot of the songs would be taken by the DJs or other producers would be like, I want to use it for mine, but now I'm ready to start releasing. So next month will be the first one. I don't have the exact date, but it'll in the next couple of days you'll know that. Um, so basically it's my first electronic rap record. Like that's a full This Is Me, and all of it, some of the stuff, small amount of it I produced, but all of the rest of it is like collabs with kind of like more established electronic producers and
Okay.
really a
So it's going to be
fusion of.
like an ensemble production cast then, like a bunch of different producers?
Yeah, it's actually the first
Nice.
album I've ever made like that because it's always been me and someone else, me and Factor, me and Mocha, me and who. And
Yeah.
so this one is basically like a cluster of all these different sounds and styles that I've been like trying to figure out and push with the type of emceeing that I make. And so that's done. So like those are all going to start coming out pretty much monthly, and I'm just going to kind of roll out just the single. And then I also have another project with Amp Live from Zion I that's like more of a focused bass hop, as well as another one with this other producer, Ill Gates, um, and a mix of other like tons of
Another one
collabs.
coming with Ill Gates because you got an Ill Gates project from I want to say
Yeah,
2023 or something, wasn't
yeah, we had this single Smoke, but yeah, we have so much music together, and a lot of
it?
it has been like the problem with doing a lot of these songs is like I'll make a whole bunch and then I just look at it as how's it gonna get the farthest. And so my idea with all of them is like when I work with a producer or like these guys, I'll be like, well, why don't we do like 2 or 3 songs and then I can have one and you can have one, or if we do one, but a lot of times they'll be like, wow, can I just take that? And I'll be like, well, yeah, because you're a lot bigger than me, so like you can have that one.
Still
And then
helps, yeah,
so
to
like
get it
even
out
all of
of an
those
air crowd.
songs, pretty much all the singles I've done, which I didn't put out that much over the past couple years, they've all were songs that were supposed to be for my album. And like Yeah, that I'm really excited, and I'm really gonna push this thing of like really trying to show people like this is coming, and it's like it has to be hopefully it can get to this point where it gets the same respect as like a big, but the whole idea of it is to really fine tune that, and thinking outside of the box, like not this just Canadian rap. This is a global thing that is about to happen and has been happening in the UK for 30 years. We're just
Yeah.
that far behind. Like
Would Canada, I was going to say, I mean, you said it's happening in the UK already, but I was about to ask, like, would Canada be leading the charge on that
I
global
mean,
expansion?
I think we're definitely part of the support of it.
Yeah,
But like I said, there are some other people who are doing that as far as, and there are definitely other rappers who, there's, and this is like the thing where there's definitely been MCs on electronic music in North America.
of course,
Are
yeah.
they still active? Probably not. Are they doing the new modern sounds? Probably not. But like, shout out to Prob Kaz. Like he's really doing this. He's doing like some crazy, really cool stuff. And it's like he's a boom bap MC essentially rapping on dubstep. And but I do think it's just a matter of time. And
Yeah.
it just to me there like there's no try to play a rap festival. Like we're not going to get booked for Rolling Loud, nor do I really want to play Rolling Loud. But I would love to play some of these other events where you're like, wow, this is so dope. And like this, everything that we loved about that community of hip hop, it's ready to be received and accepted in other communities. And so, yeah, this album is like, I'm really excited for it. And I hope that it reaches those audiences or maybe influences other MCs to think like, maybe I could do this. Or
Yep.
other
Yeah, man.
producers to maybe start there because
For
most of
real.
these rap too. Like it's not like they're not everyone it all kind of stems back to hip hop. So really it's just like I said, I hope I get to ride the wave in and it's like the next thing, but at least I know I'm a part of it and I'm part of something that's pushing a culture forward that might
Yeah.
not have existed before. And that's really the
So,
most important thing to me.
hell yeah, man. So, first single you said comes out in March. Does that mean, because you've been dropping singles here, like there was, it was all a dream and Limitless and Gladiator over the past year or so.
Mhm.
Are those going to be on the project, or this will be the first thing that people hear from it coming up in March?
This I've thought about that and it may be complicated just with different labels because of how it was. So probably not. It's mostly all going to be stuff that you have never heard.
Nice.
But primarily focused on like yeah, bass hop, dubstep, trap. There's like quite a mix of things, but in that time, yeah, like there's like I'll probably have like 25 songs on different ways dropped this year, in different formats. And so yeah, I'm really excited, and I'm curious to see how the world receives it.
That's beautiful, dude. Can I ask you about kind of just the recording process for it compared to working on, I guess, more traditional kind of boom bap sound or whatever? Because I feel
Mhm.
like, there's probably, if you're working with bigger name producers, there's
Yeah,
probably more kind of manipulating your vocals and stuff that they are going to do on their end than maybe there typically would be if somebody was just rapping over a boom bap beat, or
totally.
whatever. Is there a lot of that file sending back and forth and stuff, or how's that look?
There is a lot of that. My biggest thing is like I'm like a very vibe oriented person, so I have a really hard time making music online. And so I'd probably say 95% of the music I've ever made has been in person from scratch in the
Nice.
studio. And so often when these guys are on tours, how it would happen because uh, I'll do a lot of the tracking, like, or at least we'll build the idea, and like I can do all that stuff myself. But now it's like these guys are such better producers and engineers than me, so I'll just track it. I send them a thing. I say, do whatever you want. But some of these songs, like, because they're picky, like they'll just straight up tell me, like, yeah, I'm not gonna play that when I'm DJing because it's just not the right. It's not that it's not good, it just doesn't fit. And
Right.
so I sometimes write 4 or 5 different songs for one track that could work. So for example, Gladiator, that was a completely different song before. It was a totally and like Dr. Fresh is he's been such a huge help to me and to really one as a friend and as someone who's pushed me in that community, like he just sold out the P&E, which is 5,000 people. And but one thing that we had this song and we were talking about, and this is just an example of the experience where we did a song and it was good and it was on that beat, a little bit different version of it. But then after we went for dinner and had this conversation and he started explaining all this stuff to me and I was like, shit, I didn't really check off any of those boxes. So I went back to the studio that night without him and I wrote an entirely different song and I sent it to him and he was like, dude, this is it. And so it took, and then on top of that, it took another because he's got like a pretty big agents and teams and people looking at it. It has to make it through that gauntlet too, where you're like, and so a lot of the process is I'll write 10 verses, one gets used. I write one verse, they cut half of it because it didn't work with the drop, or they'll come back and be like, try this. And so you really have to let go of your ego and not be
Right.
attached to it. And that's maybe why it hasn't happened with rappers because a lot of
Yeah.
rappers are like, no, I'm the rapper. You don't know
I
what you're
need you to
talking.
stretch it out so that I get 24 bars instead of 16, or
Exactly.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
And you got to realize that a lot of this music it's made for dancing. So like it's made for vibe and there is a message there, but that's been the hardest thing. And that's maybe why it's taken me so long to make the record because there's a lot of no's. And this is even
Yeah.
from this is either from close friends or people I don't know at all who are just professionals who are like, well, I just know that's not going to work. And these are the rules. We can break them, but you still got to follow the rules.
So when you say that you've made most of the music in your career, 95% of it in studio, um, does that mean you're writing in studio? Like when you say you are going to do 10 verses and one of them's going to work, that sounds like
Mhm.
a long fucking studio session if it's all written actually on the spot in studio or whatever.
Yeah, most
How
of
does
it
writing look for you, man?
it had to become accelerated and like you can't and this is one thing that Mocha only really like Mocha only can he can make a song in 20 minutes, make the beat, write three verses. Like he's insane.
Yeah,
And I used to
yeah,
be like the guy that take hours, weeks to do one verse. And it was just about like learning how to snapshot that in time or at least get enough of it there that you can walk out with something. And yes, you can adapt it, but some of the times it will be these long sessions where I would go for 5 days and go stay with someone at their place and we would just be in the studio literally for 20 hours a day and just
yeah.
banging, banging. All of a sudden you're like, oh, that didn't work. Scrap that whole shit. And then, but my whole thing is whenever I make a collab with someone, I want to walk out of it knowing that, is this a song that you're going to be excited to play? Because if not, let's start over. Because
Yeah.
what's the this is music for DJs and for people to play. And there are definitely songs that I'm still making that aren't DJ friendly, DJ songs, and with that purpose. But yeah, a lot of it was like me having to get better at rapping and get better at writing fast and also understanding how song structure works and songwriting and like my friend Il Gates, he's a good friend of mine and he said the funniest thing and he's like, your entrance into electronic music is kind of funny. It's like it's you unlearning all the dumb shit that you learned in hip hop that was holding you back.
Hey,
And I was like, damn, that's so real. Like, and so it's just you gotta let go and you just gotta trust the process of what they do because they know what they're doing. And now that I'm kind of doing both, I'm often being like, I can experiment. So when you go to a Dep3 set, it's 80% unreleased music now, the same way that it is a DJ, because the whole thing I'm doing, I'm testing out all this new shit that I'm
see
trying
what
to figure
works.
out. And
Yeah,
that's the difference between rappers and electronic DJs. And so at first I was doing these hybrid kind of things and I would see the energy die and I'd be like, damn, I gotta like stay in this one bit for a bit and I gotta work that again. And that's all that these DJs are doing. Like you'll hear that song progress 10 different versions and then it'll come out 2 years later and they'll be like, this is the version that's right because I've tested it in all of these different fields. And that's why
yeah.
the music is kind of so progressive in a way, like, which is why I love it.
Beautiful, dude. Anything else you want to talk about that album? I want to get to a couple of these how important questions.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was happy to
Yeah.
hear about the album.
It'll be coming out this year and it's a wide range of stuff and it's a mix of storytelling, fun, emotion, and just really just trying to bridge those two things, like everything that I love and find in two different worlds and putting it together so maybe people from hip hop can be like, yo, like open their mind to what electronic music actually is, and people from electronic music open their mind to being like, wow, there are like good MCs or are this type of stuff can work, you
A lot of
know?
people who dislike hip hop have very negative, stereotypes dancing in their mind when they think of hip hop, right? So yeah, for
Yeah,
somebody to get up on stage and rap something where he's not rapping about all of those negative stereotypes we're so familiar with, um, I think, yeah, there's probably a lot of people in the festival crowds who are like, oh, okay, I can fuck with this. This isn't
totally.
offensive to me and my sensibilities or whatever, right?
No,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Um, all right, man. So yeah, I appreciate your time. You got another 15 minutes or whatever here?
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right, man. So then let's just start with something basic. This is a stock answer, but I like hearing artists say it because they all say it in a different way. And you definitely rely on your stage show. But how important is a good stage show?
I think it's the most important thing you have. And
Yeah.
I think that I just made a post about this last night, actually, funny enough, where it was talking about I was leaving the studio and I was like, man, it's crazy to think how many, I was talking about 10,000 hours and how much of that time I spend alone. And I referenced the artist that I just managing. He played this really big show. It was his first big one. And he was so, I just saw because I know how hard this guy works. And I saw he's doing something that's so different, which is why I want to work with him in the first place. And he, every time, he just blew everyone's minds. And so, but overall, I always compare it to this. You can get 1 million streams and you're gonna get paid what? 3,000 bucks. You
Yeah.
get your live show good, you can make 3,000 bucks in 1 hour. Like, and on a monetary system, outside of just like the experience of spreading your music and being lucky enough to be one of the people that gets to go up there and that people get to watch. And the craziest thing about it is when you do that, you're part of someone else's experience because they're going to this show. They might not know who you are. You get to like, they might just come there because their dog just died or there's someone they love just died and they're just trying to get it out. And
Right.
so when you get to do live music, that's why people go out. They want to enjoy. And I always say that music in general has two very simple things. It's to inspire and to heal.
Mm.
That's it. Like, and if you can mix that into your live show, and I would just always tell people like focus everything on your live show. And I'm still constantly learning. Like, there's so many things that you're not doing that you could be doing that could make your show that much better. And if you want to get paid $50,000 for a show, do you have a $50,000 live show? Probably not. And so it's like start taking little steps, and it's gonna like I know people who will sell out a massive venue and be like, I lost money because I spent 20 grand on lighting. I spent this and this. And that's when you start to realize, like, wow. But then a year or two later, when they're asking for 100 grand from the festival, they're like, okay, it's worth that. And so invest, in my opinion, invest all of your like music. Everyone's good at music these days. I think that's kind of secondary. Like talent is very easy to find, but
Right.
people who have like packaged live shows and are unique, that's a lot different. And
Yeah.
that's where I kind of have been investing everything into, whether that's having visuals that are custom, that are, things that go. And yeah, I think it's the most important thing. If you want to be survive as a musician and you're not like a jingle writer, that's your bread and butter.
I like that. Not a jingle writer. Um, so like in your live show, uh, you're currently not DJing for yourself then, right? So it's you on stage with a mic and a DJ.
No, so I am. So I played all last year. So what I do is basically instead of I started doing like where I was playing things from Serato after stopped working with the DJ because for 20 years it was just me and a DJ, always me and a DJ. And so what I do is basically I build a session in Ableton, um, and I have multiple MIDI controllers. One is a push, another one is like a Novation launch pad. And then I have, because I always struggle with this of me showing up for sets and not getting a proper sound check because DJs
Uh,
generally don't need one. I actually had to do my sound check before I get there in my rig. And so my friend helped me put this in, and when I stopped bringing a DJ, I started bringing a sound tech. And so what they do is they had all my in-ear monitors, my mic, everything was running through my session. It was already processed, and we were still giving them an out for the mic and the music, but I was triggering everything. And so the levels of what sometimes it is, yes, just me pressing a button back and forth, but I'm blending all the tracks together. I'm knowing when to cut things. I'm adding in different things last minute, whether it's like snippets from things I heard someone say, my daughter being like, "Hi, everybody," or like, and then knowing when to like go out in front and rapping. And it's basically a blend of that's where I'm at with it now. Um,
Do you
to
do a
s-
lot of crowd work, like call and response and stuff like that, like during breaks or
Definitely.
whatever? Or yeah, okay, yeah,
Yeah, like a big part of like, I mean, some people only know me for some of the stupid stunts that I've done, which is like one of the big ones was crowd surfing on a surfboard that I pretty regularly do. And
seen that clip. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it gets weirder as you get into your 40s where people are like, how do you, sometimes I'm like, I don't even know if I'm gonna make it, but why not? Let's try it. And sometimes you need something like I was talking about this with Amp Live about, what makes a great stage show. And I think one of the biggest things that he said that really got me thinking is like you need these aha moments. And sometimes it's good to have two or three of them. And so you could be at the beginning, the middle, the end, but these are the moments that if someone sees it, they're gonna videotape you or take a photo because it's unique. It's
right,
you. And outside of your storytelling in between, I think that's like a big part of it. So yeah, I think that's really important to
yeah.
really be thinking about that as well as like what kind of vibe are you bringing?
Great answers, man. You're killing this interview, dude. You're dropping gems left and right here. I really appreciate you coming on to do this shit, man. Uh, let's go through a few more of these. How important though? How about in 2025? How important is it for a musician to make a music video?
I don't think it's important to make a music video anymore. I think music videos are for established artists. But what is important and which I had a hard time getting past was making content. And so what helped me get past that was thinking like I've spent probably over $100,000 on music videos in the 20 plus years I've been doing it only to start hitting this hurdle when I used to be like one of those like, screw TikTok, screw this until I realized like shit, I could make a 30-second video and I don't even have
Yeah,
to edit it. But as long as I'm like, there's different levels of it, but it's about you have to invest in that. And that was something I slept on, which was a lot of things, like that's my mistake. But the reality is one of those little clips, it's about being consistent and you could shoot a rap video, but you could put 10 videos from those little clips and don't be afraid to share the same thing over and over again because as I only started doing this, stop trying to make shit for your followers. You want to make shit for your non-followers because those
right,
same people, they get bored and they're not on the internet all the time. But if you're constantly trying something new, and whether that's a trending thing or finding a way, but I think the most important thing is about being authentic and being consistent. And so for me, I love shooting rap videos. Like every rap video I've ever done has been even though someone else would take the claim, it's my ideas and it's like things and until I went and bought a camera and I bought some nice lenses because I was like, well, I want to just shoot my own shit. I need someone to shoot it for me. But often what
yeah,
I do is I get a homie who knows what they want, and then I'll be like, hey, can you shoot me? Here's my idea, and I'll shoot you in return. And then you just kind of trade back and forth. But it's about like you have to be putting out content because and now it's like this whole idea of like put shit out that's not even released because it doesn't matter. Like this whole concept of like pre-saves and all that, all you're
yeah,
doing is wasting the momentum for when it actually comes out. So
yeah,
like just put something out. A lot of you see a lot of DJs and producers doing this. They'll post 5 clips of something and be like, which one do you like most? Which one has the best drop? And then they'll take that info and they'll go back and work on it and be like, okay, that's the one we need to put on. That one had the most. So like
right,
really the internet is just a testing ground for what maybe you're going to invest in the future. And so yeah, to answer your question, like yes, music videos can be really cool when you're someone like Kendrick Lamar or like if you got the money and time, but the reality is you could film a little 30-second clip on your phone and it'll probably get 20,000 plays if you're lucky and you can spend $10,000 on a music video and you struggle to get 1,000 plays on YouTube.
right. Yeah. Once you make the music video, you still have to pay a ton in promotion to get it in front of anybody or whatever. Whereas, yeah, with the 30-second clips on the various social platforms, not so much. It'll push it to people if it's something people like to see or whatever. So
And you
yeah,
can use that as your like I actually don't really believe in even promoting things anymore. My look is, oh, if it didn't do well, it wasn't good to begin with. So like
Right.
utilize that. Like don't give these fucking companies your money just because like what you can pay for a post and what you get a bunch of people who don't give a shit about it, who are gonna like it and maybe not interact with it. Go back, delete it, and rethink about how you're gonna do it and post something that's gonna get people engaged or talk. And so for me, like what we were talking about, sometimes I can be like, wow, people don't really like when I do live show footage and like what used to get 500 likes will get 30 now. And like it's like but it's really you got to really
You
look
really
back.
think that's because people don't like it though, or is that just like
No,
that
I
the
think
algorithm fucked you over because you talked about Gaza or something?
yeah, no,
You
that's
know,
that's
like,
that's probably like part of it too, which is
yeah,
like it definitely plays a role. But I think it's a mix of everything, and I'm definitely dealing with some pretty ravaged algorithms. But I think just having just not being afraid to redo it and not being afraid to post the same thing in a different way because you can post the exact same content audio wise in 10 different ways in one
right,
week. So just don't
yeah.
be afraid to try that. And that's something that I constantly tell myself, like, okay, that one didn't work, so let's try it again.
For real. I think hip hop has a real stigma, especially against TikTok. I've noticed. I TikTok is supposed to be so good for everyone's growth and so good at showing your stuff to all these people, and it's like I don't know if hip hop picked it up. You know, I feel like there was a lot of hatred for like, oh, what am I going to go do a fucking dance on TikTok in the hip hop community to begin with? And I don't know. I
Totally.
think it's slow to grow past that or whatever. So props to you for being open minded and actually like being out there using these platforms to talk your talk, man.
Yeah,
You
no,
getting called out? You all good?
yeah, I'm good. No, I just saw that's all good. Yeah, we can still go there. My wife's got it handled.
Okay.
One more thing I was gonna say about the ad, it's like you need to, I always compare it to this. I used to take out like $1,500 ads for a quarter page section in Escape Mag, and that didn't do shit.
Yeah,
And now when I think of that, I'm like, wow, I used to do that. So like, how hard is it? Like, why am I not utilizing a free platform that I can just do whatever I want? Like, if anything, you can do it from your phone, but invest in a good camera and do that. And like, you can build I got so tired of like watching other people who people would say, "Oh, they're cringe because they do that." And I'm like, "Well, it's cringe until it works. And then
right.
it's not cringe at all because
Yeah,
you did it. You reached the people that you were trying to sell shit to." So I often think about that like, yes, there's things, there are things that are like someone once told me it's not what you do, sometimes it's what you don't do that gives you respect and integrity as an artist. So if you're doing some basic shit, some people will not like it and you can tell. But if you're taking someone else's idea and using the influence and making it your own, then
yeah.
it's your idea.
Yeah. Well, I just, for MCs especially, I mean, we're supposed to be wordsmiths. We're supposed to have opinions about things. We're supposed to be speaking for a community or whatever. It just seems really weird to me that so many MCs will write 1,000 words for a song, but you can't get them to jump on a social platform and like type a thread that takes 30 seconds to spew out some random thought or whatever. But like,
Yeah,
that helps people feel like they know artists, right? Like, that helps
totally.
an artist be more than just a fucking guy on a poster or whatever, right? So yeah,
I I think
it
it's
helps
important to like
humanize.
yeah, to let go. And that was something that in 2020 when lockdown hit, I do it with art too. I used to hold on to things and I still do it and not realizing that it's important to just let things go. And it's important. So I was doing these 60-second or 60-minute sketches where I knew I could do better, but that was the rule. I had to cut myself off. And Dochi just did this with her album that won a Grammy. She said, I got
Yeah,
30 days to finish this shit. And so this is something that my friend Il Gates teaches in his course. He doesn't work on a song for longer than 20 hours. That's the max. And that's it,
nice.
everything included. And so he's like, sometimes you just got to understand if it takes you that long, it wasn't good to begin with. It needs to come out of you. And so it's the same with content. Like post stuff and don't be afraid to let it go because in the end, no one cares really about you or what you're doing outside of your circle. So it's not
Yeah,
like someone like I've heard people be like, "Wow, I post that and then now it's ruined." I'm like, "No, no, half the people didn't even see it. No
for
one
real.
cares. Like just think about no one cares about you, and you'll
Definitely,
probably
man.
feel better about everything."
Put it out like you're putting it out into the void, into the vacuum or whatever. What you said there about like only working on a song for 20 hours that your homie recommended, like, dude, my last, I guess, full album, I bought 10 DJ Moves beats and then was like, fuck it, I'm gonna write and record one track a day for 10 days in a row. And I mean, looking back at them, like, are any of them super hits? No, but like, it's about fucking progression. It's about putting the art out. It's about fucking expressing yourself or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
I definitely think there's something to perfectionism can be good, but it can also just be the enemy of ever putting anything out too. So
I know way too many cases of that, and I've dealt with it myself. So
yeah, bro. How important is getting grants for Canadian artists? You kind of mentioned that it used to be like we'd feel good because we were living off grants or whatever up in Canada. But
yeah, you know what? We're very lucky to have grants, and I've gone through different phases of it. Like I got one for this new record a while back, and I went through this phase where I started getting grants in 2003, and these are a lot were for like community programs I was doing until I found out about. So like when you think about it, I honestly don't think the Canadian music industry would survive without grants. And again, there are people who've kind of come in and like taken over that thing, and but don't think that my opinion, I've written every single grant for myself except for one, and I've probably got over 40 of them. And I think there's a misconception, and hopefully these people don't come at me, but if someone else writes a grant for you, you still got to do all the work. You're just handing them the information to fill it in. So why not just
right,
do it yourself? Yes, you can get advice, but you what a lot of people don't realize is you can actually take the grant and there's sessions with BC, whatever, Creative BC or provincially or national or nationally where you can actually submit the grant without submitting it, have them read it. They'll give you feedback and come back.
right,
Same thing. Do that yourself. Like, and don't, there's people who will sell you this idea and you think that you'll only get it if this person writes it. That's bullshit. Like, I think my whole thing before was like, well, get them while you can, because I don't think they're going to be around forever, with the current state of the world. But I also went through this other side of it where I actually kind of like, not boycotted. I just wanted to see if I could survive without them. Because
right.
that to me was what I was seeing my US counterparts doing. And then I was like, okay, it's way harder, but I can. And now I might as well get some. But
And
the
combine those two things though, right?
combine those
Yeah,
two things. And like really, I always tell people with writing grants, if you weren't gonna do it anyway, you don't deserve the grant.
yeah,
And that's really it.
hell yeah, man. Yeah. Dude,
Yeah.
sometimes I talk about that. Like, I'm too busy, honestly, to loop back to the perfectionism being the enemy of being finished. I never apply for grants because I'm just like, I don't know, that seems really difficult. I always hear people saying it's fucking right next to impossible, or like you said, you've got to pay this guy to do that or whatever. So I just keep fucking doing the damn thing. I'm just out here fucking putting out a show every week. Doing what I can without it. And I kind of laugh at the podcasts that I see pop up and they've got we're funded by the government of Alberta and they're here for 8 episodes and they interview their six buddies and then they're gone forever and no one ever fucking hears from that again because the grant funding ran out. And it's like, I don't
Yeah.
think that that's really a meaningful contribution for the
No, well, I think
society,
that
really. Like,
I think you're a perfect candidate for it because you have such a history with it. I actually, believe it or not, I just applied for a podcast grant.
nice.
And it was like but I think that, if that's something you want to help with, I'm happy to help you. And I think that you can, like, there's different levels to it. But if you have a recorded history of doing them, like, you've already done the work. It's just a
Right.
matter of, like, it is sometimes harder because you do have to show them every little thing and prove your point.
Like,
But
are they going to make me stop swearing? Like there's other stuff that I'm kind of just like, I don't know. I want to be able to do what I want and not have to fucking worry about like
no,
these.
I don't
Yeah.
think they would. I think there's certain ones that if they're like a TELUS one or something, maybe they would, where they're
Right.
like going to use it and put it on their platform. But as far as like provincial or national, they're not coming at it like that. I think again, what I know works best from previous experiences, you just gotta think beyond yourself. How is this good for the community that I'm a part of? And if you can
100%.
prove that in any way possible, you're probably a candidate for it. Like, yes, there's definitely, things that they're looking for, but that's really it. And like, are you, whether it's an underrepresented community or something that maybe you feel, but if you really just pour your heart out, whittle it down into fill it in the boxes and just say, this is why I do it. And I don't think and you probably will get rejected quite a couple times, but I sometimes some of the ones that I spent the most time on, I got rejected. And at first I'd be like, I'm never applying for a grant again.
Right.
I'd take a bit and I'd be like, well, maybe I could revise that idea. And then a few times later I'd get it. And like, or it's also comes down to who was on the jury. Like, and you know,
And where
yeah,
they're like, Doobyis, what type of a weed smoking
yeah.
fucking degenerate is this? Like, I,
Or you could be like, they need this pothead community, like the pothead community needs this because
we're
we
wildly underrepresented out here.
wildly underrepresented. But do it, apply for it,
Yeah.
man. Who knows how long we're gonna last in general.
Yes, yes, that too. Yeah. As long as we have a Canadian government to continue giving out grants, we should be knocking on the door
Yeah, the
for it.
51st state is definitely not gonna give you a grant.
Fuck that. Man, unbelievable. Yeah. Dude, okay, so I want to ask a couple more of these. Let me look through and find the ones that'll be most interesting. Um, how about this? This kind of plays off of what we were just talking about with political strife in the world. How important is a message in the music?
So this is a big one. I'll try to keep it short. Um, I think it's really important at this point in time, and I understand if you're not the type of person whoever did that or spoke out against things, but you keep seeing these things like artists are essentially the most dangerous people in the world as far as like spreading a message because you have the ability to maybe let someone into that world and understand it a little bit more that's not just commercial mainstream news. And I come from my family's from Chile, and before that, when that all went down, when Pinochet took over and the coup happened, which was a U.S.
The
based,
original
oh,
9/11, right? That
the
was a
original
September
9/11.
11th as well.
When
Yeah.
when that happened, not only did they, but when they found, because the musicians were part of who helped Allende get elected, they executed the musicians or they exiled them. And this is the power that they had, like, and yes, we've got like our Rage Against the Machine and we got Run the Jewels and like, but don't think for a minute that the industry isn't run by the other side because it definitely
Oh yeah.
is. This is the
Yeah.
battle that I face. And even on the platforms you use, they're also run by the other side. So you can do it. And sometimes it might be to your detriment where I go to therapy and my therapist says something that I always tell people. It's like you can't expect to burn the system down and still be a part of it. And so what I mean by that on many different levels is sometimes if you're trying to do one thing and you're this and you're constantly shouting politics and things that people maybe don't want to hear, like we're living in the ignorance is bliss era more. Like a lot of people just
For
are over
real.
it. And
Yeah.
there's a reason for that because that's kind of the idea. And like
It's by
our,
design, right? A lot of the time it's by design that we're
it's
being
by
overloaded
design.
on purpose so that we check out. Yeah.
Exactly. And so for me, I struggled with this and I stopped talking about stuff. And now I've just been like, and this is I guess it's a matter of like when you have nothing to lose, and maybe that's why I could get to this point. But when I really looked at it, I was like, I wanted to say so much because I was already kind of studying these things just in a different zone, let alone what's happening now. And but my thing was like, well, and so many people are like, no, you shouldn't do that. That'll backfire on you for sure. But then I was like, these people aren't helping me anyway. So why the hell do I care? Like sometimes
Right.
you'll find the community that you want, but the only way you're gonna find them is to speak out against it. And it doesn't necessarily you have to come out and be like, F this thing or this. Sometimes you just go position yourself in these places, but like the most powerful music will always be something that has a message. And it doesn't necessarily have to be political. But when people can walk away and you've changed their mind or feel like something that you said inspired them in that sense, that's super powerful. And
Yeah.
when you're just doing surface level bullshit or coke rap or whatever the hell it is, and you're adding to the negativity, it's the whole like this whole like high vibration, low vibration, it's real, man. And your words, you speak, you can speak things into existence, like things that I didn't even know I could do. And sometimes, and I think when it comes to the world, and especially the position it's in now, like we are some of the most powerful. You're so much more powerful than you think. And yes,
Yeah.
it might backfire on you in ways, but in my opinion, and you like again, like I understand how a DJ or producer who's never said anything feels uncomfortable going on thing and talking about whatever it is, but like there's other ways, there's other ways to show support and there's other ways to do things. And so to me, my music has, I struggled with this a lot until I went back and I did like a throwback show and I was listening to music I made 20 years ago. And I was like, shit, I was talking about this shit. So why am I afraid to do it now? I just didn't
Right.
know as much as I know. And
Yeah.
and and again, it comes back to like there's definitely times now where when I say, the industry kind of is on some don't bite the hand that feeds you, the whole thing, the world really. And that's by design. So when it comes back to these communities aspect of things, these are the things that people can't take away from you. Yes, they can cancel your page. Yes, you could even get canceled as an artist, but is your integrity as a human worth that? I don't think so.
Damn. Yeah, I would agree, man. I would agree completely. I think a lot of artists talk about how they want to play the middle road so that it's, you don't scare away half the audience off the bat
Mhm.
or whatever. But I liked what you said there that it doesn't have to be fist up, fuck that guy music necessarily. You can still have a revolutionary message by talking about inclusivity or talking
Yeah,
about things that aren't necessarily, embrace the hate messaging or whatever. It can be embrace the love, and that can be a way to push forward too. But dude, my favorite music has always been stuff like you said that makes people think a little bit.
mhm.
You hear a bar and it makes you think about something in a way, just from a perspective that you might not have had before. Like I said, growing up small town prairies, hip hop opened my mind to a lot of different thoughts that the people around me were not expressing, right?
Totally.
And that's the most powerful thing I think to lyricism is that you can get people to think about something in a different way. So it's a shame to me when artists, you know,
Are afraid.
take a lyrical art form and don't do that with it.
And
To
what the
each
thing is,
their own, right?
I understand why too. Like we, it's, I was afraid of what was going to be taken away from me a lot until I realized that they weren't giving anything to me in the first place. So like,
Yeah.
why do I care? But yes, I've even honestly, I've lost some pretty big opportunities in the past couple months from the things I've said or things but it's nothing that I wouldn't stand behind in person. If you said it, I would say it to your face. I'd say it to whoever's face. But that's the difference, I think, between being a leader or follower, really. Like, and this is the big argument that I got into, which is essentially the difference between underground music and commercial music is that one is designed and like Drake, I hate to say it, as much as people think he's paved the way or done this, dude is a follower. He literally is just copying what's current and trying to find other people who are doing it, taking their ideas, commercializing it. As where the weirdest shit that I listen to in underground of this, even up to a point where these guys are selling out stadiums, the reason they're there is because it's so different
Yeah.
that other people resonate with it.
Dude, the best art isn't supposed to be for everybody. You know what?
Exactly.
Like that's
Exactly.
that's really what it comes down to is if your art doesn't if everybody likes it, I don't know. It's not doing something right in my opinion. There should be somebody who doesn't
Yeah,
like your
and it's
music.
for like you can make commercial music. Yeah, it has a purpose, but like, like yeah, there's levels to it, really. I think a
Correct.
balance of everything is good. Like you have to understand that people embrace things sometimes because it's in a certain key or so because it's this. Like when you see like that whole thing where like half of the pop songs in the world are the exact same chords kind of thing, you're
Right.
like,
Yeah, and they can sing
science.
all these different pop songs over it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a formula to it if you want to get that mass success or whatever. But yeah, I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to make art, right?
No, no.
Yeah. So, dude, before I wrap this thing up, I always ask people the same questions. Can you describe your local scene? And I mean, it sounds like you've lived all over the map, so really talk about wherever you want to.
Yeah. Um, I think in Vancouver where I live, there's a lot of talent and there's a lot of like different communities that are trying to find a way to work together. Um, and I think that over the time that's evolved drastically, wherever I lived. But I think the one thing that I do feel lucky for is that there is talent everywhere and um, there are people that could maybe use your help. And so it's this idea of give and take. If your community sucks, maybe it's because how much have you really given to it? And if your community has disappeared from you, how much did you do to keep it there? And so that's something that I'm experiencing right now, especially moving genres and being in this weird world that we live in of like, what have I actually done to stop that? Or what have I actually done to, because it does change. It changes even like regionally, it's drastically different.
Yeah,
But the people who I succeed, who I see who are really thriving and bringing their community to other places are the ones that are thinking like that. And they're the ones that are like, you know, you come up with your idea and then try to bring it elsewhere versus trying to blend into someone else's or explore other communities because
yeah,
there's a lot of different ones. And I think it's all the reason I could find success being an underground rapper from Regina was because I was throwing shows with punk rock bands and metal bands and all these different things because there wasn't a community. But I thought, hey, we're kind of like-minded. Like, why don't we all
yeah.
just get together?
Dude,
And I
I've
think,
I've jumped up between punk bands and done my fucking rap set too, or whatever. That's sometimes that's what you got to do. And there's so much similarity: the DIY aesthetic, the anti-authority
yeah,
ideology, or whatever. Yeah, um,
I think it's like find your crowd and
yeah,
don't be afraid to find any. But the only
no,
way you're gonna find them is by being you. That's all I can say.
definitely, man, definitely. I like that. So any artists you want to give shout outs to that people should be up on?
Um, yeah, I guess my crew, there's a new artist that I'm working with named Oakham. In my opinion, he's the future. My homies Pigeonhole, obviously K-Lab, Late Night Radio.
What type
Um,
of stuff is Oakham doing? Is he rhyming as well, or
so he's a producer, but he does a lot of stuff like, we've kind of labeled it our own thing called Dream Bass, but it's kind of an extension of like if you listen to like Flume or Porter Robinson or Madeon or even like elements of like Skrillex, but it's very beautiful ethereal cinematic music, but also has like the grimiest drops and beats you've ever heard. And this
nice?
is a dude, his day job is an architect, and he's built a world that I just want to live in and I listen to. And yeah, he's probably the person that I would give the most shouts to because I just
Dope.
really see it, and I think that he's gonna change a lot for that
Right on,
genre,
man.
push it forward. So
I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to ask specifically about him, what he does. If there's anybody else, feel free to shout them. Otherwise, I've
no,
got
those
two
that's
two more
that's
things to
really
wrap up.
my, those that's my crew really, and
Nice.
Il Gates, yeah, shout out Il Gates and shout
Sounds
out
good, man.
my homie Pavin, who's like a grime rapper from he used to be in a group called Foreign Beggars. He's been a really big help to me, and but yeah, I just think yeah, I'm really
Beautiful.
grateful for the people that I have.
All right, man. Any shows or tour or anything like that coming up that we can tell people to look out for? I know you
Yeah,
were gonna fly out to where was it, Mississauga or something, and then that ended up falling through. And yeah,
yeah, I was
are you
playing in
getting back out east anytime?
So I have a show in Hamilton on April 17th, but I'm about to announce a bunch, but the ones that I'm allowed to announce are at the end of this month I'm playing in Golden, BC on the 28th, and then March 1st I'm playing in Revelstoke, BC. And then outside of that, the only ones that I'm allowed to announce are that Hamilton, but I'm definitely going to be making my way out east again and definitely through Alberta in a lot of different festivals.
Yeah, it was
And
Hamilton, not Mississauga, right? Did it just
yeah,
get
yeah, Hamilton
postponed?
is
Is
where the
that how
show.
that? Okay,
It got postponed because of the storm or whatever, so
right. Okay. Well, shit. After seeing that plane upside down on the tarmac out in Toronto yesterday, yeah,
that's
maybe
crazy.
maybe not the best time to be flying
I
out
was thinking
there.
about it. Yeah, I'll definitely be trying to cover all the. I want to trying to come back to everywhere I can and just like play the little spots, play the big spots, but really just play.
Dope. What's the best way for people to support you or other artists that they like?
I think at this point, just sharing the content. Like, not everyone has money, but if you buy things directly from Bandcamp or whatever, or buy merchandise, you know, if you can afford it, don't ask for guest list, pay for a ticket, help the promoter, help everyone who's involved, and like. But I think, at the most surface level of it is drop a comment or a like, as stupid as that sounds, like that helps with engagement and that might
Yeah,
lead to someone else finding it. But
That's
Um,
exactly it. It boosts it so that it gets more visibility. If the platform that you post on is seeing, okay, everybody who sees this has clicked like, it's going to show it to more random people. So, yeah,
yeah,
that's a great way to support.
share things that you like, other people's stuff, not just your own.
Definitely, man. Yeah. I do my best. And anytime I see anybody I've talked to on this show, I hit like on their shit. Just even if it's
Yeah,
something that I don't really like, I'm gonna hit like because why else am I following these artists if not to try to help fucking promote them and get them out to more people, right? Um,
totally.
dude, where can people find you on social media most often? That's the last question.
Um, I guess the obvious, the Instagrams, Facebook, and TikTok, but I'm actually really trying to get in more on to build my YouTube thing. So
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
gonna kind of be posting more exclusive stuff there. But I guess in the best possible place would be to sign up for my newsletter on my website.
good
And
idea.
yeah, I try to like spread it out and speak the language that each platform requires, but sometimes it misses. So
Yeah,
whatever
I
your
said
cup
it
of tea,
earlier, but you've
I'm
been
happy
doing a
there.
great job on the platforms, man. Of
Thanks, man.
of all the artists who I watch, there's not a lot of them who are very active or who, are very engaging online. But you're actually a good follow on the platforms. People should find you. Is it just Def3 on all the platforms then?
Yeah, Def3
Yeah,
on everything. So
beautiful. All right, man. Well, I thanks again for doing this. We went double overtime here. I apologize. I hope your family
uh,
will forgive me, but yeah, I had a good
uh,
time. It was a pleasure to meet you and pleasure to talk to
dude,
you.
thank you, man. I'll be in
Yeah.
Edmonton soon. So you're in Edmonton, right?
I'm in
Uh,
Lethbridge. I
oh,
got
Lethbridge.
roots in Edmonton. I lived in Edmonton for 12 years before I moved down here. But
Well, next time I'm anywhere near there, I'll hit you up and
yeah, man.
let's.
Or, like the other reason that I do this show is to try to build the network you're talking about where artists can sleep on each other's couches.
Mhm,
That can often lead to, like you said, whatever else down the line. So uh,
totally.
I've been trying to just kind of know who's who in every different Canadian city so that if it's time to go book shows or book tours or whatever
Yeah,
the fuck else, put a festival together maybe one day, something like that. I know who's who, and
for sure,
hopefully
man.
artists are watching these things and getting to know each other a little bit. But that's the overarching big dream of this entire project, I think.
Man, don't
So
ever lose that, you
hell
know?
yeah, dude. Hell yeah. All right, dude. It's been fun. I'll let you go. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, thanks so
Peace.
much, dude.
Yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed that as much as I did. Make sure you follow Def3. He's got new music coming up. That'll be exciting to hear. Outsider album coming soon. First single in March, he said. So I will definitely be on the lookout for that. Like I started off this entire thing saying, I do a weekly mix show with my homie DJ Dice. Shouts to DJ Dice. He's the reason that I know about, the first 9/11 and Pinochet and the overthrow of the Chilean government because Dice is proudly Chilean as well. So, but DJ Dice and I put together after the smoke is clear every week. If you want to listen to more independent Canadian hip hop, that's a good place to start. I do my best to stay tapped in from coast to coast and play brand new music. We never play anything twice. So you can find that mixcloud.com/Doobyis. Doobyis. I'll put it on screen, but for the benefit of anybody who's just listening to this, um, as well over on Mixcloud there. After every hour long mix, there's an interview. So you could be listening to this on Mixcloud right now. If you are, I appreciate you. These interviews happen live on twitch.tv/Doobyis. So over on Twitch, that's where the live stream happens. And then after the live stream, they get posted on YouTube. So you can find, youtube.com/Doobyis as well. Me on any of the social media. I'm always active and spewing out my opinions into the ether. And I appreciate people who come through and interact. Appreciate everybody who came through today. And yeah, catch you all on the next one. I guess, well, I can say what I'm doing next week. So, February 25th, I talked to BC Twitch. He was an artist in Edmonton over the summer, but now I believe he's back out in, I want to say Kelowna, someplace interior BC, I believe he said. But I'm looking forward to talking to him. He's an MC who has sent me a bunch of new music and has new drops coming up this year. March 4th, I'm talking to Hermit of the Woods, who actually Epic, who I shouted out earlier, told me would be a great interview. Apparently, Hermit of the Woods is like a professor who has majored in hip hop, I believe, if that's a thing. I don't know. But he should be an interesting guy to talk to. He's done a lot of work documenting the history of East Coast Canadian hip hop. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's March 4th. Uh, March 11th, I talked to Kaboom Atomic, who I believe is Vancouver based, but he has a new album out with the Dirty Sample, who is a Calgary based producer who I've talked to on Fly in Formation twice before. I'm looking forward to reconnecting with him and hearing about their new album as well. Kaboom Atomic is like funny both in his bars as well as his like content. I think he's a comedian, honestly, who also raps. So that should be an entertaining talk. March 11th. March 18th, I'm talking to Trips, who is Edmonton based MC, famously from the Doom Squad, with Kripal and Nine Lives as his partners in crime, I guess, for the Doom Squad. But he's recently dropped a solo project, which I really enjoyed. So we'll talk more about that, as well as just the Edmonton scene in general. And then March 25th, I'm talking to Arlo Maverick. Who wants to talk about the grant system because he's seen me shoot my mouth off online about the grant system, and he's seen me post a bunch of different artists' opinions about the grant system, and he's pretty closely involved with the grant system here in Alberta. I believe he's sat on juries, and he's definitely written and received plenty of grants and helped other artists in the past do that. So I'm looking forward to talking to him specifically about grants. That should be a good one. And maybe one day I can figure out how to get a grant for myself between all these artists I talk to who know the ropes of this thing. But yeah, this has been fun. And I'm sorry that it was so long. If you people were looking for something short, I will chop clips and you can digest this in nice little minute long clips as well. But that'll be to social media soon. Anyways, appreciate y'all. Thanks for coming through.